You're watching BCTV. We're all about Brantford. You're watching BCTV, Brantford Government Television, a service of Brantford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Brantford.
Good to go. Good evening. It is 7:07. My name is Peter Basserman. I want to call to order the Inland Wetland and Watercourse Commission meeting of Brantford, Connecticut. We are meeting on Thursday, August 12th at the Joseph Trapasso Community House, 46 Church Street, Brantford, Connecticut. A couple housekeeping items for those in the building that have been vaccinated. Masks are not required. We're trying to maintain some kind of social distancing. If you haven't been vaccinated, please wear a mask. Regarding use of the microphones, when it is an opportunity for you to speak, we need to use the handheld mic in order to have it recorded with the BCTV programming. Does that go for us as well?
You got the...
Yeah, we don't need the handhelds. I know there was an issue last time about a handheld. Okay. We are meeting in conjunction with the executive order that Governor Lamont signed. And first up in our call to order is a roll call of commissioners. As I said, my name is Commissioner Basserman, Peter Basserman. Why don't we sound off to my left?
Commissioner Boda, present.
Commissioner Kraus, present.
Commissioner Papantonis, present.
Commissioner Begemon, present.
And staff?
Jamie Frederick, present.
Abby York, present.
Okay, we have a number of minutes for approval as our first item on the agenda. By the way, the agenda is available for those that would like a copy. It's also on our Dropbox on the town website. First up is July 12, 2021 site walk minutes. Looking for a motion for approval.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes of the site walk on July 12th.
Is there a second?
Second. Except I think it was the 8th.
I'm sorry?
Except I think it was the 8th.
July 8th. No. Oh, yeah.
July 8th, yes.
July 8th, 2021. Good.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Do I hear anybody else aye?
I wasn't there, so I'm going to
Yeah,
abstain.
one abstention.
Okay, so there's 2 abstentions, and everybody else is an aye. Next up, July 8th, meeting minutes.
I have a question on, for Abby. On page 3. The first paragraph, third bullet, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, the fourth,
Sorry, 1 second. Let me just pull them up.
oh,
Said second page, third bullet.
no, third page,
sorry.
fourth bullet.
Sorry. Yep.
The second sentence, just clarification, staff stated the change took place in October 2020. I wasn't clear about what that was, and then I think there's just a word missing. Staff suggested the homeowner consult an engineer for any modification to the stormwater.
Yep.
But you mean probably stormwater management,
Yes.
and I just don't know what change that was.
Okay. I will make a note of that and adjust it for the next meeting
Okay.
for approval.
Yeah, so
Was there
it's-
anything else?
No.
So table till the next meeting.
Please.
Okay. Thank you.
July 29th, special meeting minutes.
I make a motion to accept the meeting minutes for the special meeting on July 29th.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Petitone has seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
One abstention.
One abstention.
And
Suzanne
another-
is an abstention. Whoop,
I
two,
wasn't,
Thank
two
you.
abstentions.
wasn't present.
Last up, August 5th.
I'll make a motion that we approve the site walks minutes for August 5th, 2021.
I'll second.
And I'll, let's see, any further discussion? I will abstain.
I'll abstain as well.
And with that,
We're good?
everybody vote aye?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Second item on the agenda is the applications for receipt. Inland Wetland 210811, 175 Cherry Hill Road, an 11-lot subdivision. And as part and parcel, it had a fee assessment review. We have somebody here? Yes, thank you.
Real quick, before we hand it over to the applicant, when the application came in, I told them what the fee was based off of our past practice when I was the inland wetland assistant. However, based on recent practice, the commission has been assessing subdivisions as subdivisions without regulated activity. And the activity in this subdivision is just up to the 100-foot review area, so I think it might be more appropriate to assess the fee as a subdivision without regulated activity, which would bring the fee down to a total of $110. So I think that's something the commission should consider tonight as well after the applicant gives the initial overview. Yes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James DeMayo. I'm a professional engineer at Giuliano Associates. We're located at 405 Main Street in Wallingford, Connecticut. I'm here to represent BC Investment Properties at 175 Cherry Hill Road. I won't go into the full application details. I'll just kind of hit the main topics, at least in terms of the fee assessment. There are no existing wetlands on the property. The closest area that we come to the upland, 100-foot upland review area is down here on proposed lot 7. And I'm currently just showing a house, basic footprints, but that's not set in stone yet. So if the commission wants to have us come back, or the enforcement officer would like us to come back for just that site plan, that's fine. But essentially, there's no grading, no clearing, no nothing in the upland review area. Yeah, we got 2 detention basins on the property that help control the stormwater runoff, and trying to impact as little as possible.
What direction is the stormwater heading?
So
Where is the discharge?
there's a couple different areas where it's naturally flowing down. So a lot of it is grading down kind of towards the wetlands down in this direction. Then, so this is a high point. So then it comes down towards an RWA property, which there are wetlands, you know, I think 400 feet off the property in that direction. And what we're doing is we're proposing a detention basin here that is capturing any runoff from the proposed road like until that high point, to that crest. And it's just bringing it in this direction. The rest of the water's kind of still flowing towards the wetlands. And then at the base of the road, we're handling all the stormwater for that area down here that would be flowing in this direction anyway with another detention basin, which will then, when it overflows or, you know, allows water to pass through it, it does still travel in that direction.
I have a question. Will the water be traveling over 18 Autumn Ridge Road? That one property owner, it looks like their land sticks out beyond everybody else's.
Nope, that property is actually, elevation-wise, it's higher than all the property around it.
So it's gonna go around?
Correct, so more so their water is going in our direction than ours onto theirs.
I had a question on the man-made farm ponds. How is the water for those ponds retained? Or how does it get there and how's it retained?
So, the water will be collected via catch basins and pipe network throughout the road. So for instance, this is the upper one. In this area, it'll trap the first couple hundred feet of the road and via catch basins. And then pipe network will then channel it into there. There's an outlet control structure in each of these basins that help control the flow out. So it's just not surging out, it's controlled. So there's no increase for any of the storms. And then same thing with the lower detention basin. It's just capturing everything in the roadway via the catch basins and pipe network. So currently, what I do have is the roof leaders are just pretty much daylighting on the property. They're not getting channeled into these detention basins. I am accounting for volume of stormwater, but I didn't want to starve any of the wetlands along the neighbors' properties.
How is the-
Go ahead, Commissioner Kraus.
How is that pond that you're adding, or it looks like you're adding in the eastern open space, how is that gonna affect the property owners at the end of Abbey Road?
Even Autumn Ridge Road, this here?
Well, it looks like the eastern open space butts up to, I don't know how big that is, butts up to number 10 Abbey Road and number 9 Abbey Road.
Oh, yes, okay.
So are they at a lower?
Yeah, so those Abbey Road properties are the lower wetland, the existing wetlands that I was referring to. So that's why I didn't want to channel the roof runoff into this detention basin, because it was gonna starve this area in this watershed. So I tried to balance it throughout, is basically what ended up happening.
Okay, but it won't impact those property
No,
owners?
no. There's no increase coming off of any section of the property. I believe I broke it up into 4 separate watersheds,
Okay.
and all of them are still there.
Those ponds that I asked about, if we get a 100-year storm,
Yep.
those ponds will not overflow?
Correct. Correct. And they do have overflow weirs for if we got back to back, something crazy, so that it doesn't,
Not
cause
so
problems.
crazy these days, though.
I know, yeah. But this way, it won't just blow out. It's designed to handle it.
And the engineering report deals with the volume data as well as the direction of flows and all that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's not for tonight, that'll be.
Correct, yeah, that's.
Yep. Any other questions from the commission? Now we can deal with the fee assessment.
The discharge from the detention basin, how far is that from the wetland?
So all of these detention basins are on opposite ends of the closest wetlands to this property. So I'll use this. This is the overall survey. On Abbey Road is down here, and this is where the closest wetlands are to our property. Our detention basin is up here. This is the lower one, which is flowing towards Cherry Hill Road, in that direction, so they don't overflow towards these at all. And then the second detention basin is on this side of the property, which again, it doesn't flow towards those, it flows towards the RWA property. In terms of
So,
discharge.
but there are wetlands on that side.
It's almost like 500 feet from the property. And we're not increasing the flow of water across this property line in this direction either.
And
What's
then-
up?
Sorry, just to follow up, so then, and what is the change of elevation from the point of discharge to those wetlands that are 500 feet away?
I do not have that information currently. I can look it up and get it for you for the next meeting.
Yeah, the slope would be helpful.
Yes, ma'am.
I have one last question. What's the land look like now? Is it trees? Is it meadows? Is it rocks? What is it?
It's easiest way to describe it, it's kind of like overgrowth. There's few healthy trees on the property, but a lot of it's just tall brush.
Everyone does have a copy of a soils report
Yes.
that was conducted after the application was submitted, which has some pictures of the site. I also asked that they specifically look at an area where looked like there'd been some erosion and possibly that there might be a water course or a ditch. The soil scientists determined that it was a erosion ditch and not a water course. And I feel like there's something else.
He is here if you have additional, more detailed questions on that.
I did have a question regarding the drainage from the basin above that and whether there's any concern as to whether that erosion problem will get worse.
So, that's something that we can look into, and the point of discharge can move in order to prevent anything like that from happening. Very easy.
So this is for receipt this evening, which means we're not acting on it this evening.
I
The
didn't
one,
see this, sorry.
the one issue that remains for us for this evening is a fee assessment review. Is there any commissioner who feels that they can't consider the fee assessment review with the information that they have, or do they need more for that review? I guess the crux of the issue on the fee assessment is the fact that there is no activity in the regulated area. And so it would
Just
have
a
a
quick-
different fee associated with it than if it were in the regulated area.
And just a quick reminder that the commission regulates activities, not areas, and that the upland review area can be extended from 100 feet if there's steep slopes or other circumstances. And when I was looking at the site plans, it seemed like something the commission normally would take an application for and extend it just a little bit. Also, the activity is within like 5 feet of the upland review area, and the house example envelope location is within 5 feet of that limit of disturbance. So it just seemed really tight, and I thought the commission should look at it.
I think without those, knowing the slope and without seeing the site, I would like to see more before we determine that it's to change the fee structure. I think that would be a useful exercise.
We'll see you next month.
Does the commission want to schedule a site walk or wait until the information's provided?
I think, I would say seeing it before the next
Yes.
meeting would be.
Yeah, because then we start to get into timing issues.
And I can make sure I have that information for you for the sidewalk.
The site walk is, yeah, well, the site walk is really just for orientation purposes.
I understand.
Should we schedule that now? Our next meeting is when, Jamie?
The next meeting is September 9th.
That's right before Labor Day weekend?
No,
That's
No, Labor Day is that Monday.
Labor Day's the 4th, that weekend, isn't it?
the
the
sixth,
sixth.
it's the
Yeah,
sixth, that's what
Labor
I'm
Day's the
saying,
sixth.
so like, if we were, I would suggest staying away from that weekend, the
Mhm.
weekend before,
Mhm.
because it's Labor Day.
Oh. I thought it was going to be at night before the meeting.
Oh, that could be maybe. Like a Wednesday night? Or the Thursday night? So we have Rosh Hashanah on the Tuesday.
So either the couple hours or the hour before the meeting, or the previous Thursday?
Yeah, I would not like to do right before, I still have to feed kids. So
Okay.
doing both of those things is not ideal.
So, September, then, let's see, is what,
The second?
second?
I thought that you didn't want to do it the Thursday before Labor Day weekend.
No, the weekend before.
The weekend,
Like the
okay.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
Okay.
The Rosh Hashanah. But the Thursday would be fine, the Wednesday would be fine. Wednesday the 1st.
Yeah, that doesn't work for me. Second works.
It's good with me. It's fine with me.
September 2nd?
What time?
Yeah, what time?
What did we
After,
do?
after dinner, what time? Or
What
before
did we
dinner?
do? Like, what did we do? Was
Five-
5:30?
5 o'clock?
5:30?
5 o'clock.
5:30 is what we did last time.
Yeah,
5:30.
5:30 was fine.
5:30.
5:30, the
September
2nd.
2nd.
So I would say for your purposes right now, to just hold that date, because if there are other site walks, the time may scooch around,
Mhm.
and we'll know by the end of the meeting.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And I'm assuming it would be best to meet on the Autumn Ridge side, as far as parking goes, maybe? or-
Yeah, that'll most likely be the easiest.
And then it looks like this road is going between two of these houses, so can we walk down that way, or do we have to come in this other way? Am I looking at the right map? This is a new road, this Vienna Way, correct?
Correct.
So where do we want to meet in front of 18 or 14, and we can walk between there?
Yeah,
Okay.
you're correct. There's essentially a right-of-way strip that's left there between the two properties.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, inland wetland 210802, 61 Bourbon Drive, creation of a multifamily residential development.
The wetland relay. Evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is John Nuff. I'm an attorney with an office at 147 Broad Street in Milford. I'm here tonight on behalf of 61 Bourbon Associates. 61 Bourbon is the owner and applicant with regard to 61 Bourbon Drive. You may all know that this was a Connecticut hospice building for many years, and then most recently it was a monastery for the Benedictines of Jesus Crucified, Inc., and it was a home for nuns and also a hospital. And my client has acquired it for the purpose of redeveloping it as a age-restricted multifamily project. What's interesting is that we are not proposing any expansion of the building, any expansion of the development envelope whatsoever. We are simply seeking to frankly, significantly improve the stormwater system. Right now, the system is aged, it's not up to current standards, and we want to take this opportunity to bring it up to the current standards, comply with the DEP stormwater manual, and in addition, in that work is also to do some what I would categorize as maintenance work of replacing the sidewalk, replacing the pavement, and Ryan McAvoy, who's a professional engineer, was going to give you a little bit more of a description, but I would ask at the end, it seems to be appropriate for something that perhaps the commission could authorize Jamie to approve, if you were so inclined, because this is going to be an improvement to the wetlands, and we're not doing any work. There's going to be encroaching on any wetlands, and the work in the upland review area is limited to that maintenance work and the work associated with improving the stormwater system. So with that, here's Ryan.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Ryan McAvoy. I'm a licensed professional engineer with SLR Consulting. Our offices are 99 Realty Drive in Cheshire. And just to orient you to the property, this is a colored aerial of the property today. The property being highlighted, or boundary being highlighted by this yellow border around the site. Bourbon Street located to the north and east, north being up on the map. The monastery shown here roughly central to the property. Neighboring property uses to the south and east are the St. Elizabeth of Hungary, former location of the St. Elizabeth of Hungary parish. There are residential properties to the north and west along Bourbon, and there is town of Brantford open space land to the south and west, and a park across the street. So presently, the site has a fairly large parking area. Access is provided on the easterly side of the building to the parking area, and there are some garden areas, meditation areas located to the east and west of the current building. Presently, the site is relatively flat with some minor topography in the far western corner of the site. High elevation of 50 down to roughly 24. There's a fairly extensive wetland corridor located in the wooded area to the west. That wetland corridor continues underneath the building to a piped drainage culvert to a small wetland discharge located to the east of the building. Presently, all the drainage from the parking lot is conveyed through a pipe and catch basin system out to an end wall at the watercourse, and it is currently untreated with any water quality features. And as was mentioned, our goal with this application is to convert the building to residential dwelling units and to essentially reconstruct the parking lot to make it a little more efficient in terms of parking space and layout. The footprint of the parking will remain consistent with what's there today. It'll just be reshaped a little bit. There's very limited grading associated with this. It's really, again, more just adding new islands, new landscaped areas, and things of that nature. We are including a new sidewalk in this dark tan color out to the street. And the existing sidewalks are shown in a lighter shade of tan. And there is an existing parking that is going to remain in place to the west of the building. In terms of stormwater, again, we're going to be collecting the parking lot area through a pipe and catch basin system and conveying it to the same discharge location. However, in the drainage system in the parking lot and also a smaller drainage system adjacent to the building, we're going to be incorporating a water quality unit, a CDS unit, which is designed to handle the water quality flow from the first flush of runoff from the site. That CDS unit will be able to trap floatable debris, sediment removal, up to 80% of the suspended solids in accordance with the DEP water quality manual. Again, there's no additional regulated activities that aren't on the site already. Really, this is just an effort to reconstruct, improve stormwater, reconstruct the pavement, improve stormwater, and essentially add a sidewalk along the current driveway. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Question on the parking area. Same size?
Yes.
Have we considered something other than macadam?
Excuse me?
Have we considered a surface other than macadam, or, can we consider pavers or other more porous surfaces?
I don't know that the site would be conducive to that. We did not consider that because we're not increasing the impervious surfaces associated with this application. Typically, those would be, it really would require a thorough exploration of the subsurface soil conditions to know if that's even feasible. But given that we're keeping the same general footprint, we thought a standard asphalt surface would be.
But you are making improvements to the stormwater
That's correct.
management area, so this could be another way of improving, if you will, the site.
If I could, we're going to be parked pretty much at the limit. So obviously our residents are going to be 55 and older. Typically, you see those sorts of things. I mean, maintenance is a difficult issue with those sorts of applications. Obviously, sanding and salting is more of an issue. So I think in terms of making this conducive for the future residents, I think it creates more of a maintenance issue, trying to use those sort of pavement materials rather than, basic asphalt.
Are you increasing the number of parking spots?
Yes, the number of parking spots is being increased by basically improving the efficiency of the circulation.
So how many parking spots do you have now, and how many are you going to have then?
Difficult to say exactly how there are today because the striping is long since gone, but we believe we're adding in the range of about 15 spaces. And
15?
Again, it's not by increasing impervious, it's just by improving the efficiency, double-loaded parking bays and things like that.
Can you talk about that white space in the middle? Is that for like
Landscaping.
landscaping?
Yes.
And I'm assuming that that's raised?
Yes, it's all curved.
And have you considered inverting that and using that for water storage and?
I don't know that it's been considered, but it's certainly something that can be considered.
And where did you say that the water discharges?
It's collected and conveyed to, the ultimate discharge on the property is an end wall structure on the easterly side of the property, where all the drainage from the site currently drains to.
Is that the limit of the property?
Yes.
And what kind of endpoint do you have? Is it a?
It's actually
flared
flared.
end?
It's an existing flared end section of the end wall.
Are you doing any work on that section?
No, there's really no ability to do that. It's like probably feet away from the property, but we're providing the water quality unit well before that location.
What is the status of that flared end? The land around it, is it scoured out? Is it?
Not particularly, no. It's pretty stable. It's all vegetated right now along the property line.
Can you just talk a little bit about the system that you were talking about putting in?
The drainage system?
You said you were using a CV, what?
The CDS, it's a proprietary water quality unit. It uses swirl chamber technology to separate out suspended solids within the stormwater itself, collected in a large well at the bottom of the structure. It also has screening mechanisms to trap floatable debris at the top of the structure to remove them from the drainage system itself. So
It's like a
with the-
Vortechnics?
it's like a Vortex. It's the same company that Vortechnics is, yeah.
How is it different?
It's just a more updated product. It's the more modern version of Vortechnics, I would say.
Will those units have a manhole cover or an?
Yep.
I've only briefly looked at the plans, but it seems like where catch basin 1 is and that's being replaced is a low point. Is that anything?
Apologies, catch basin 1 will have an open grate. It'll be a low point and we'll have an open grate section. So
Yeah, I think in
almost
the-
like a yard drain top.
I think in the plan, in the materials you submitted, there were 2 grate tops.
Right.
And so I was wondering if one's for the yard drain and one's for that catch basin. If I can
Right,
send you an
so-
email and if you can clarify that.
Yeah, I mean, that's stable structures can come with a manhole top or an open grate top, depending on the nature of if there's a drainage watershed to it. So I believe you're correct that one of them is an inlet structure.
I know you said this, but I just want to ask again. The total number of units is not changing, and the footprint of the building is not
Not
changing?
at all, no.
Thank you.
Is the existing building being used or?
Currently, don't believe, no.
No, sorry, I mean, you're renovating the existing
Yes.
building,
Yeah.
right?
At this point, Jamie, any concerns?
I've briefly looked over the plans. I did have a couple of minor comments, such as, they're replacing a sidewalk along Bourbon Drive. I'd recommend putting silt sacks or inlet protection in the catch basins along that work. So I just want to review plans a little bit more to see if I have any other comments like that. I think there's likely to be public interest in this project. I don't know that it would relate to inland wetlands, especially since they are improving the stormwater management for the site. But I thought I'd just mention that because when we had an application previously in the local area, we got a lot of calls wondering if it was this property or the property next to it. So I just thought I'd make the commission aware of that.
So it looks like you have a corner that's in the upland review area. Are you working in that space by the
Yes.
north, kind of, the northern edge of it is in the upland review area?
That's correct. So this area in here is current parking right now, and it's gonna remain parking. We're just, again, reconstructing the parking lot in that area.
You're repaving,
Repaving, yes.
and you're tearing up what's there?
That's correct. It's in pretty rough shape right now.
And are there stockpiles denoted?
There's
Where,
gonna be
are you
very
hauling
limited.
off, are you just immediately hauling off, or are you stockpiling?
It'll be, the current asphalt will be removed from the site. There's not gonna be any significant stockpile. There's no significant grading on site. It's really reshaping.
The closest activity to the wetland is the replacement of catch basin 1 with the CDS unit by the water course.
And that's down in this area over here. That's just replacing drainage that's currently on site and upgrading.
What is the grade? Is it flat between that northern corner and flag between 325 and 323?
There's only a couple feet grade change across that whole stretch.
Jamie, is there a reason why we might not have it as an agent approval?
I think it could possibly be agent approval. Like I said, I'd want to look at the plans a little bit more. I'd probably also bring it to, we have an internal early plan review where we have other departments take a look at the plans, make sure there's no comments that would significantly change the site plan for any reason, such as egress needs or something like that. But if the commission were comfortable with it being agent review, I can take a look at it and make a decision once I've finished looking through it, or bring it back to the commission if I'm not comfortable.
Yeah, it's sort of right at the edge.
Yeah. And I think also knowing that there's public interest, there was no way I wanted to do it as an agent approval without bringing it to the commission. But it is a stormwater improvement for sure, from what's on site.
I think, so just for the record, I think that my slight discomfort with doing it as an agent approval is that you have that work in that just kind of cutting in that 100-foot upland review area. But I think the fact that it's so flat there and that you're not clearing really, I think that I'm more comfortable than uncomfortable asking Jamie to review it, and if upon that review there's something that needs to come back to the commission, I think that I feel comfortable that Jamie would be like, wait, actually this is not as straightforward as we thought.
Okay.
Any other commission have any comment to add to that? Any further reservations?
I'm okay with what Commissioner Bowe said.
Sounds like a plan here.
Do we need a motion?
I think we need a motion.
At least general consensus has been our past practice.
Is the commission comfortable with Jamie reviewing the material on this particular application and making an assessment as to whether it qualifies for agent approval, or if, under her review, or as a result of public comment, she's uncomfortable with that, to bring it back to the commission the next meeting?
Yes.
You okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Inland Wetland 210803, 5 and 13 Summit Place, demolition of existing building and construction of a new 48-unit multifamily apartment building and associated parking.
Hold on.
What was the street address?
The street address was 5 and 13 Summit Place.
Can you just give us a second to pull up the right stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Me again. For the record, again, Ryan McAvoy with SLR Consulting, professional engineer in Connecticut, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant for conversion of number 5 and 13 Summit Place to a multifamily residential development. This property, and I'm going to refer to it in the singular, even though it's technically 2 properties today. This property is the historic previous location of Brantford Hall Career Institute, located on Summit Place. Summit Place on this particular plan is shown on the upper side of the street, with north to the right, just to keep you guys on your toes. Route 1 is just off the street to the right, to the north. Abutting land uses are Summit Place Residential Development Phase 2, which was just completed to the south of the site, Phase 1. On the opposite side of Summit Place, there's a storage facility, U-Haul storage facility located to the west. On the other side of Summit Place, there's commercial properties along Route 1 to the north, and Town of Brantford open space land to the east. The site, as you can see from this aerial plan, is fairly extensively developed today. You do have a very large parking lot to the south of the building located to the north. There is currently fairly significant amount of slope going from the historical development of the property down to a wetland that is off-site. That wetland was delineated in 1990 as part of the, I believe, the original subdivision of the plan, and we maintained that wetland delineation as part of this application. Currently, the drainage from the upper parking lot, again located to the south, is out towards Summit Place, and the majority of the areas around the building, and the parking lot around the building, drain out towards the wetlands to the east. The site currently is about 3 acres in size, about 2 of which are currently paved. And what we're proposing to do is demolish the existing building and parking areas and replace it with a single building that will consist of 48 dwelling units located roughly central to the site, with parking to the south, parking along Summit Place along the west, and a small parking area to the north. As part of our development, we are decreasing impervious surfaces by half an acre, so we're going from roughly 2 acres to roughly 1.5 acres. And with that decrease in impervious, we have a corresponding decrease in stormwater runoff and volume for up to the 100-year storm out to both Summit Place and to the wetlands to the east. We're also limiting our development to areas that were previously graded and previously developed as part of the historical layout of the property. In terms of sediment erosion controls, we are providing a plan in accordance with the 2002 guideline for sediment, erosion and sediment control from the DEP. We are providing improvements to water quality by incorporating a CDS unit, a water quality vault, at each discharge location prior to connecting into the current system, which is designed in accordance with the DEEP Water Quality Manual. And the site is going to hopefully have an improvement in water quality as a result of the proposed improvements. That's a brief summary. Obviously, this is for receipt tonight, so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or see where you want to go.
Distance, closest distance between the building and the wetland, I assume it's that point to the left there of the building, the bottom left?
Yeah, I'd estimate it's about, I'd say it's about 70 feet from the wetlands.
How far is the existing building from the wetlands?
The existing building is roughly the same distance in this location, I'd say around the 70-foot range. I don't have the exact number for you, but I can certainly get that. It's just in a slightly different location, a little further to the north.
Where did you say the stormwater is discharging?
Roughly, well, the upper parking area to the south discharges to Summit Place, to the drainage system within the road. And the northerly section of the property building, most of the parking in this area drains to the wetlands to the east.
Where does the drainage from Summit go? Does it go?
Oh, it goes out towards Route 1.
Will that stay the same? That half will still go out towards Route 1 and the building half will?
Yeah, so essentially what's going out to Summit Place is the vast majority of the parking area, including the southerly parking, the parking between Summit Place and the building, and then a small portion of the parking lot to the north, along with the building itself, will drain to the wetlands. So there'll be a significant decrease in the amount of parking area, the amount of impervious area overall, but certainly the amount of parking area that drains to the wetlands. The majority of the impervious that will get there is from the building. Still a decrease from what's there today.
So talk to me again about the roof drainage system and how that is handled.
So the roof drains are collected and conveyed through a yard drain system located between the parking lot and the road, and brought out to the CDS unit where it will connect into the existing drain system that discharges out towards the wetlands. And the parking area to Summer Place, or the drainage to Summer Place, again, is the majority of the parking, with the exception of this northerly-most section. So a small section of parking will drain back to the wetlands. And that's in an effort to sort of balance what gets to Summer Place versus what gets to the wetlands, and showing a decrease in both. In other words, if we took the building out to Summer Place, sorry about that. I'm sorry, did I answer your question there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you know where the outlet is relative to the wetlands, or?
So
no, it's on site?
the wetlands are very overgrown. It's very difficult to get back there. It's treacherous, to say the least. There is a head wall, an end wall rather, just off the sheet here, where drainage is collected from the parking lot to the north along Route 1. And I believe very, very likely is the final discharge from the drainage on our site. I say very likely because it's almost impossible to get down there safely. There is a pretty steep drop off, and there's it's difficult to get down there on foot. But based on the direction of drainage on site, where it comes off the rear of the building, it is all directed in this general area out towards the wetlands. So the final discharge, I can't say with certainty where it is, but I believe based on old mapping that the town has, and based on the fact that that end wall is there, although it does have some boulders in the vicinity, treacherous to get down there, we believe the final discharge point is just off the sheet to the east of our development.
Are those wetlands in the Branford Land Trust property? Is that the Beacon
Yes.
Hill? Is that it?
I don't know if it's referred to as Beacon Hill, but it is on, I believe it's on Land Trust property, yes.
So, are you saying that you don't really know or have seen what the discharge point is?
I've seen it, but I can tell you that getting down there is very difficult I can only testify based on being out there twice, trying to find it. I found the head wall. It's down about 8 feet in grade, heavily vegetated, very overgrown. A little difficult to get down there, but based on mapping that the town has, based on the direction of, from the site where drainage pipes are being directed today, it's very likely that that's the point where it discharges.
So the condition of that head wall is unknown?
Unknown.
Is there an intention to make it known?
Well, with a cherry picker perhaps. We could do a little bit more investigation to try to establish the specific location, but I can certainly tell you where we strongly believe that it's located. But it's a fair question, and it's something that we'll have to investigate more.
Yeah, I just don't know how you discharge into a situation where we just don't know. We don't know the condition.
It's frustrating on my part too. Yes.
This candidate for a sidewalk.
Yes. Sorry.
Not down to the wetlands.
And I guess the question would be, if you are going to investigate that, would we do the site walk after that becomes more of a known situation?
I think the only thing that, I mean, it would be prudent to work on that, and to stake out what, that corner, and then the southern corner, the southeastern corner there. I don't have wetland flags here, but
Which,
that southeastern corner here, I
Okay.
would do these
oh,
two
the building
corners.
corner. Okay, sure.
And to make it as accessible as possible, you know.
Right. Okay.
I got boots.
Should we try to do that on the same date as our other site walk?
I think so. And that's why I said the time, I don't know that we should set,
But that's 3 weeks, right?
yeah.
Hopefully that's enough time.
Is that enough time? I mean, he's gonna come back, they're gonna come back next month. Like, so, and we can't just put a pin in it, right?
Right.
Unless you wanna put a pin in it.
No, that's okay.
Yeah. So they'll work it out.
We will work it out, yes.
Looks like
So
you might have a-
that's why I think we shouldn't figure out
Schedule.
the exact times, like we say around 5, 6. But,
What was the date? I wasn't.
the second, September 2nd.
September 2nd.
September 2nd, okay. Around 5 or 6, whatever, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, because
Okay.
what we'll do is we'll look at where the places are, and we'll figure out what direction it makes sense to start and end.
Okay.
I think that's gonna depend on each individual commissioner. So do you want to keep the original start time for the site walk at 5:30, or did you want to
At
move it
this
up to 5?
point, yes.
Okay.
At this point, yes.
And start at Autumn Ridge maybe, and then go to Summit Place, so that way we don't have to change the time for the other applicant.
Yeah, so what are we talking? Yeah, I would say probably 7:30 would be, probably too late. So it gives us a couple hours to get the 2 site walks in.
Well, I don't think we have to determine the exact time that we'll be at the second site. We can say, starting at Autumn Ridge to continue to And we can just give the applicant a ballpark time of when we
Yeah,
think we'll be
but
there.
I'm just saying, we have a window.
Oh, I see.
of A couple hours.
I don't think the sidewalk will be very challenging because it's, you know.
Pretty flat.
It's pretty bland out there.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you're entertaining comments from
Oh.
So you
the
want,
public. or
Peter,
not.
just one second.
Thanks, Ed. I only have heard Commissioner Krause's question about,
oh, your name.
I only have heard Commissioner Krause's question, but she asked something about the land trust. If you're asking where the stormwater.
Introduce yourself, Bill.
Huh?
Introduce yourself.
Your name.
Your
Oh,
name,
I'm sorry.
for the record.
For the record, Bill Horn, I live at 246 Pleasant Point Road, and I've been involved with the land trust for 25 years. I wasn't sure, I heard you mention the land trust. If you're asking if the stormwater discharges onto land trust property, it does not. It's a town of Branford property that has the wetland. The land trust has been concerned about stormwater coming from this site because ultimately it gets down to the area below Bourbon Drive. And the land trust has a property there which receives all of the stormwater coming off the backside of Branford Hill. And we're currently experiencing very, very bad erosion there. So the volume of stormwater is a concern, but we don't have a concern with this project.
Thank you.
Okay,
Would there be anything else?
that'll do it. Thank you. Inland wetland 210804, 47 Gould Lane, a scour hole repair.
The applicant is not present tonight. Something came up and the application is just for receipt. Site plans should be passed out to all of the commissioners. This is in response to historic erosion issues, and the land trust has granted authorization for the application. There are a couple members of the land trust present. I don't know if they have any comments.
Before that, is there an urgency associated with this repair?
No, so essentially what happened is there's sediment accumulated in the outlet, and what they're looking to do is remove some of that sediment, reshape the outlet, and improve it for post-construction situations.
Are we having erosion today because of the current condition?
I would
of
say
the-
that nothing is any worse at the moment.
Okay, does the land trust wish to make a comment?
For the record, Bill Horn.
Sorry.
Sorry.
That's okay.
For the record, Bill Horn. I checked with the land trust president. He said he was aware of it and they signed off on it. I don't have any personal knowledge of the details of the project, so I can't speak.
Can I ask one question, Peter?
Please.
Does this have anything to do with that thing that was installed to keep the sediment from overflowing, or is this on a different area of the property? Remember?
This is.
No, this is different, I think.
This is
Yeah, so
different.
essentially, I forget, it's 20 single-family residents and a 10-unit condo property.
Right.
And a portion of the drainage discharges to Gould Lane, and there was a problem with sediment going down Gould Lane.
Okay.
And so it's the outlet at the low point in Gould Lane. They're looking to remove some of the sediment and put in.
Okay, so this is from that other thing takes care of mostly the right side of the road that the development is on. This problem is occurring from the left side of the road where the condos were built?
No, so if you're coming out of the new development road, you would turn downhill left, and it's that low point there.
Okay, yeah, okay, great, thanks.
Mr. Chair? I'd be happy to answer any questions about it. I helped the applicant put together the plans. I have not had any discussions with him about presentation tonight, but I think if it's helpful, I can answer questions about what's proposed.
Well, I guess my question is, without the applicant being here, is this something that we table until the next meeting?
I did inform the applicant that a decision couldn't be made tonight and that it cannot be agent approval because there is a little bit of activity in the wetland. So unless the commission has any questions or information they're looking for at this time, it can just be for receipt.
Okay. Sounds like a good plan.
And it doesn't, there's no urgency necessarily associated with this, so.
I know that the applicant does want to get the work done as soon as possible once he gets the green light from saying that the conditions are ideal for the work to occur. But I told him it can't get approved administratively, so it's gonna be the next meeting
Okay.
at the earliest.
Okay.
I will just mention real quick, I did get an email from the town engineer. I asked him to take a look at it, and I will share this with the applicant and the property owner. It says, in regards to the restoration/repair plan for the scour hole at the bottom of Gould Lane, the town would only require an excavation permit for the access area. It should be noted, any damage to the existing storm sewer will be the responsibility of the contractor of record, and the town will not be assuming any short or long-term maintenance obligations, if any, for the finished scour hole. So, I have not fully looked at the details of the plan, but just making sure that there's information on the record as to short and long-term maintenance, I think is gonna be important. So I'll follow up with the applicant about that.
Thank you. Okay, next section for the agenda are the applications for review. These are applications that have already been received by the commission. First up, Inland Wetland 210601, 54 and 60 North Main Street. Construction of new automated car wash. This is one that we had a site walk for.
Good evening, Jim Preddy, Criscola Engineering. This is not only a sidewalk, but our third trip here on this project. At the last meeting, I believe we left off, we had answered all the questions. We were waiting on the town engineer's comments on the stormwater report, which I believe he has done. We also have received approval from WPCA for the sewer connection, depending on the consultant verifying capacity. But we feel that that's not an issue because the capacity was just done for all these down the street, and there was room in there, and so we don't think it's an issue. That their consultant was on vacation last week, so it's a tentative approval. I do have with me the applicant, Nicholas Magnana, our attorney, Joseph Porto, our wetland scientist, Matt Davison. If there's any additional comments at this point, we're here. I did see the staff report, possible conditions for consideration. The first one, there's pretty standard stuff. The second one is a piece of curbing, that was a drafting error. The rest seem to be about plantings, monitoring, and laying out by a surveyor, all of which are agreeable. So, again, we're here for questions.
I would ask the commission to take note of the staff report on 54 and 60 North Main Street and take a few minutes to just look at the staff report.
I unfortunately missed the site walk, so I actually have one question. How much is the impervious surface increasing? It's Commissioner Kraus. How much is the impervious surface increasing from what's there now to this proposed site?
So, per the town standards, all that process stone area, that's been there for years, it's considered impervious. So, we're actually decreasing by a small amount, because we're adding a lot of landscaping and grass areas and things.
But you're going from stone to asphalt?
Stone to asphalt, but we're also, what happens there now is basically from the edge of the road to the back of the retaining wall is all the water runs directly off into the wetlands through the wall, through the low point of the wall. We're actually raising the back of the site, pitching it forward so we can collect it and treat the water before it discharges.
But it'll still run to the back, not to the road?
It'll still get to the wetlands, but it's doing that now, but uncontrolled and untreated, so we're cleaning it up.
Jamie, no outstanding issues on this?
No.
So this is actionable this evening.
Yep. I see your note about a bond.
Yeah, so I throw that in every time I throw in a condition for consideration that has the bond, because the commission sometimes decides bond is required and sometimes it isn't. I think this is a site plan where the commission in the past has taken a bond, but it's a case-by-case situation for the commission to consider. So I just wanted to remind the commission that you don't have to take my possible conditions word for word.
To that point, does any commissioner have issue with the words that have been illustrated here on these two sheets? Possible conditions for consideration and standard conditions. Are there any issues with what's expressed here?
I'm just going to share that I'm going to recuse. I've missed a couple of meetings, so I'm not familiar with this at all. I'm doing
Commissioner Boda, can you just, we couldn't hear you over here. Did you just recuse yourself?
I just recuse myself.
Okay,
I
thank you.
have not been present for this application.
No, it's okay, thank you.
I will make a motion that we approve inland wetland 210601, 54 and 60 North Main Street, construction of a new automated car wash with the conditions that are expressed in a staff report prepared for the August 12th, 2021 inland wetland meeting. Both possible conditions for consideration, standard conditions, as well as the general provision and the issuance of all permits to be included in the permit approval. And I would also recommend that a bond be required for the planting plan, illustrated in item 3B. Pardon me, item 3A and B. That's a motion.
Commissioner Papantonis, I'll second.
Any discussion on that, and we need to have a discussion on the bond? I think it makes sense that a bond be required, given the fact that we have, planting plan. We've assessed bonds where there is a planting plan involved. In other applications, I guess the question, Jamie, how do we establish the amount of the bond?
The amount of the bond is established by the applicant submitting an estimate of the items to be bonded, which is reviewed by staff for appropriateness with market values.
So I just confirmed with the applicant that he was acceptable to the bond, and we will provide an estimate for Jamie to review.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that information is in the language too, as to what the process is for the bond estimate.
I'm going to take a vote. We think we do this by roll call.
Commissioner Begelman, aye.
Commissioner Papantonis, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye.
Commissioner Kraus, I'm going to abstain.
That's an issue.
We only have three.
No, it's still unit.
You still have three?
Yes, it passes.
I don't quorum, for
So there's a quorum
attendance for-
sitting, so we're
Got it.
good.
Yep,
Thank you.
thank you. Next up, inland wetland 210605, 26 and 28 Old New England Road. Construction, new single-family home.
So we just received new site plans at the start of just before the meeting. And I did receive an email from David Lord, the soil scientist, this afternoon, which I only quickly got to out of the office. Should we get rid of these?
Oh, these we don't need?
Wait a minute.
So, wait, no, those
No.
are, we
These are
put
the
them
new
in,
ones.
on the table for you, so those should,
August 5th.
You got two of them.
there should be one that's stamped received today.
And it says alternate site plan.
All right, so
I
you don't want
believe.
this one.
I'm assuming that you're looking to move forward with the alternate.
12.
Okay. So I think that the revised site plan septic still needs to be approved by East Shore District Health Department. There is still direct wetland impact on the revised site plan. I just received it here, so I've not been able to take a look at it at all. I don't know how it changes the outstanding wetland application fee, because there is an additional fee charged for direct wetland impact that has not been submitted yet, in part because they were looking to reduce the direct wetland impact. So I'll just read real quick while you guys are grabbing your files. David Lord updated, I just want to confirm the status of the recent work on this application. At present, the following changes have been made to an alternative house layout on this property. All on-site wetlands have been shown on the property. The septic system has potentially been moved to the north side of the lot. This location is of course subject to the approval of the health district. The house site has been shifted upslope to the west to move the majority of the house outside of the wetland limits. Calculations have been made of the changes to the wetland and upland review zone impacts from the above changes. As soon as we can schedule deep test pits and percolation testing with the health district, we will add this information to a further revision of the site plan. At that point, we will look at on-site mitigation requirements as requested by the Branford Inland Wetlands Commission. On-site mitigation areas are available, as well as the possibility for wildlife beneficial plantings on the eastern side of the house. And then he goes on to say that due to a scheduling conflict with other public hearings, he could not attend tonight. When there is direct wetland impact over, I believe it's 750 square feet, which I know at least the previous site plan had, there is mitigation required by the regulations of 2 to 1, so double whatever the direct wetland impact is.
Abby, can you just say that again? What happens with 2 to 1?
So if you're impacting, say, 1,000 square feet of wetlands, you have to do 2,000 square feet of mitigation.
Okay.
But at this point, do we have a complete record of what's going to transpire on this site?
I would say no. They're looking to pursue a site plan that would have less impact, direct wetland impact. However, they still needed confirmation as to whether or not the new septic location will work, and they have not shown any wetland mitigation. I'm looking to see if we have the numbers as to the direct wetland impact.
I don't know how we can proceed without a complete record.
I'm also wondering if, like, what is the threshold that we are required to have a public hearing? Because we're talking about fill.
I don't think that there's a threshold for a public hearing. It's if the commission determines that there's gonna be a significant impact, or that it's in the public interest, or there's a petition. So I think in the past, the commission has basically used the 750, but even if it's less,
Yeah.
you can make that determination, so.
So I think it would be prudent to revisit significant impact in our regs, so that all of the commissioners are, making a determination whether this rises to significant impact.
Do you want me to read the definition, or?
Well, but that's my problem. We don't necessarily have the plan in front of us complete to make an assessment of whether there's a significant impact or not.
Well, maybe, but, so if we look at our regs, so this is in the definitions FS, any major effect which may result from conducting of any activity, including but not limited to the following. Any activity involving deposition or removal of material which will or may have a substantial effect on the wetland or water courses, or on wetland or water courses outside the area for which the activity is proposed. Or any activity which will substantially change the natural channel or may inhibit the natural dynamics of a watercourse system. Or any activity which substantially diminishes the capacity of the inland wetland or watercourse to support aquatic, plant, or animal life and habitats, prevent flooding, supply water, assimilate waste, facilitate drainage, provide recreation or open space, or perform other functions. Any activity which is likely to cause or has the potential to cause substantial turbidity, siltation, or sedimentation in the wetland or watercourse, or any activity which causes substantial diminution of flow of a natural watercourse or groundwater levels of the wetland or watercourse, or any activity which has the potential to cause pollution of a wetland or watercourse, any activity which creates conditions of an inland wetland or watercourse which may adversely affect the health, welfare, and safety of any individual of the community, or any activity which destroys unique wetland or watercourses areas having demonstrable scientific, education, or ecological value. So those, I think that that's, because, I don't know, can we determine without a number? Can we determine based on this corner? Because if we are required by our regulations to have a hearing for this, based on past practice, based on the regulations, I believe it would be in the best interest of the property owner to know that as soon as possible, because that's a different burden. So if we can conclude that tonight, maybe we cannot conclude that tonight, but if we can conclude that and tell the homeowner, yes, definitely, or we don't know, I think that that would be the most fair thing that we can do.
Okay, I guess question that stimulates, is the proposed 3-bedroom dwelling moving on the site? Or is it in the same location as I'm looking at here?
Then moved from the existing.
Sorry, if you. This
is.
Yeah, that's the moved one.
Yeah,
Say your name and your home address.
Can you hear me?
Not really.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Helena McLean. I currently live at 30 Old Manual Road. This property is an attached property to that, which I split 30 years ago legally. And we are working toward trying to build a little tiny home on it, not disturbing. I love my wetland, but trying not to disturb. So Dave Lord has been trying to move this little house to disturb, not to disturb the wetland. So we have done perk tests, they've gotten approved, but now we have to move the septic system to the other side of the house because he backed it up and higher. So it appears it's not, according to Dave, in the wetland. So maybe, I don't know. I'm not a soil.
Yeah, I'm looking at the
So
alternate plan dated August 11th.
Yeah, he was working on this. We've had trouble getting in touch with him for a few weeks, so I've discussed with him that he needs to be available to me. So it's not on our part, it's him, that I couldn't get him. So he said he is on board with this, so he's done this plan.
Have you seen this plan?
He has. My husband, yes, we have.
Can you come here?
The picture? Yeah.
I don't know.
Did you look at the first print?
Yeah.
Yes, yep.
The septic was in front of the house.
So
Yeah, we're talking about here, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
So if we look, so this is
Go
our
ahead.
wetland line.
Let Commissioner Boda talk.
This is our wetland line. Here is your house. So the wetlands are still cutting through your house. And this line right here is the silt, where the silt fence would be. And what that tells us is that this would also be the limit of disturbance. So even though this is this corner only, the impact to the wetland would go all the way back here. And so,
From the original print.
Yeah.
The septic was all in the front there, so it
Yeah,
actually
this
pushed
is-
the house deeper into the wetland.
Yep.
So he worked with Dave Mathis, proposing the septic over here.
okay,
So it allowed him to pull it out of the wetland as much as he could to make
The
it.
house.
Yes. It was a little deeper earlier, I guess,
Yeah.
because what happened was David Lord did the soil test, and the wetland has increased in the past 30 years from the original prints. We have, we did
They had to
subdivision.
redo it.
Right.
right.
So from an old map, the wetland wasn't as far up.
So do you know, is this, so this is stamped The 12th, today.
That was today. They were working together. Dave
No,
Davis to.
This is the old one.
No, this one right here
Yeah,
is the
this
12th.
one.
Yeah, you see the septic was in the front of the house before.
Right.
That pushed the house deeper.
So under the survey notes, where number 3, disturbed wetland review area, 22,146 square feet, and then it increases to 25,394 square feet, and disturbed wetland area is 924 square feet. Is that what you're talking about, Commissioner Bada, cutting through that corner? Is that what
Yeah,
relates
so
to that?
here-
But so if you look at the previous map, the numbers are different, but they go up, actually.
Right, yeah. Oh, this is okay, so this is the review, and this is the wetland.
And see, on the previous plan, it was 22,146 for number 3. So
I'm not laughing, I'm not laughing. I just-
I'm gonna cry.
No, I
I don't
know.
understand.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
I'm just trying
I
to
hope
compare
it's
them,
okay.
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's a lot, and it's technical, and it's,
Yeah.
sorry, I feel like,
Well, that's
Well, I
like you
just
said.
wish I could help you, but I don't.
yeah.
No, he didn't come tonight to see it, so we don't.
So he
have to
didn't,
come
so
back.
there isn't a wetland disturbance
The old
yes,
one,
on the old one.
but there is underneath.
So this is 924.
It actually should be a less disturbance now with the house pulled forward, whether the numbers are right, because the house is definitely pulled
Up
forward.
and it's higher.
But this isn't, so the difference, the increase is about
Do you have here?
the disturbed in the wetland review area, which is the 100, the 100 foot line, which is up here. So if you've moved stuff over here, then it would make sense that the wetland area would, the upland review area would increase if you've moved stuff this way. This is where it gets really tricky, because you're over 900 square feet. So our regulations require that if something is going to be a significant activity, then what we have to do is we must have a public hearing, which changes the requirement to you. So it doesn't foreclose your ability to get a permit, but what it does is then you have to provide to the commission what's called a prudent and feasible alternative, which means something that can be done reasonably to the plan that you're doing that has less or no impact to the wetland. So what we don't know right now that the
Yeah,
commission.
not the 924.
Not the 920.
Yeah, not better than 924. It's no impact to the
You want
wetland.
0.
Zero.
So,
It's 0 or it's better than, right?
Significantly
So
better. than.
Significantly better than the 924. So it might be that, and as a commission, we can't make a plan for you. That's something that you would do with your engineer. But it might be that they can turn the house, that they can, even if they're able to move it up and over just a little bit. I know that there's setback lines that are required, and you can maybe talk to Jamie about how you might get, maybe there's something that can happen with P&Z that would allow you a variance for a setback line. So again, it's not to say that you would not get your permit, but it's just to say that having something with a significant impact it requires a more significant, it comes with a heavier burden,
So
which I'm sorry to say.
I don't know what a heavy burden means.
Yeah.
is that money?
More
Money?
information needs to be
Is it money or
submitted.
is it approval?
Well,
Is
I
it
know
vote?
with plantings and everything, but,
But sometimes you have to offer, and correct me if I'm wrong, a reasonable and prudent alternative, but still sometime that doesn't work either. But, so then you can choose the two, correct?
So you, right, you have to kind of demonstrate, basically what you're doing is you're demonstrating to the commission that there's absolutely nothing else that can be done.
I'm almost
on the-
thinking we're almost
I'll
at
talk to the
this
engineer.
point. I'm
Well, we did
thinking
pull the
that this
house
little-
forward
Yeah.
and move the septic over
You know,
here.
this is- that's what
That's
I'm
the first
thinking,
step we
so-
did to
Yeah.
try to get away from the
So
wetland.
what I have to do is talk to them,
Mhm.
and if they say this is it,
Well, and you can tell them, like,
you
they.
know what I mean? I don't
they-
know.
yeah,
If
they-
he says,
yeah.
this is,
Because it has to
it.
meet certain setbacks on property
Right,
lines.
and they're
unless it-
talking about the variances and stuff like that.
Right.
You know, then you might not get the variance,
Right.
you know?
Which makes it not a prudent alternative,
Right,
correct?
exactly.
So then we have to go the other route.
We have to-
Accommodate
The
plantings and
disturbance.
create other space.
So, but the first step is really the commission has to, that's why I wanted to push the issue tonight, because what happens is, once, let's say the commission says, yes, this is a significant impact, there must be a hearing, and therefore you're required to submit prudent and feasible alternatives.
The prudent-
Everything that we've talked about is gone. It's like it never happened. Because all the information that we have about this application we can only consider information that we received during the public hearing. So it's like a clean slate.
So the first thing.
I'm sorry. I really am.
is Talk to the engineer to see this is it.
Well, so first, let the commission.
Commission has to determine whether this
Right.
is a significant activity. And
Right.
Commissioner Boda has put on the table, basically, that a 924 disturbed wetland area is a significant activity for this commission to consider. So I'm gonna take a roll call.
Wait,
Oh.
sorry.
Huh?
You can, if you wanna do that, go ahead. I can say my comment for afterwards.
Well,
No, that's, say it now.
So I just also want to mention that if the commission's going to have a public hearing, it has to be scheduled to open at the next regularly scheduled meeting, or the commission needs an extension of the timeframe. I think there's another thing that the commission needs to consider, and that's whether or not a peer review would be required. And I'm not sure if there's enough information available for the commission to determine that. And if the commission does not determine that tonight, it really puts a tight timeframe on the public hearing. So, I mean, the commission can move forward with scheduling the public hearing and processing the application as revised materials come in. But the applicant may also want to talk with their professionals about what the time frame for getting the revised materials will be, just to make sure that you're not going to run up against the time clock at the end of the application.
And whether these notes are accurate, since no accompanying information
Right.
came with it, right?
The survey notes?
Yeah, they should be, right?
Yeah, they should, survey
But it
notes should
just,
be.
I find it confusing that the one number went up when they made modifications to improve the plan, but that's.
I'm wondering if it's because they've moved stuff this way.
Yeah.
And putting more into the upland review area.
Okay,
That's what I'm wondering if that's why it increased. I mean, it would.
I
we
would-
need
That
to
would make
put them
sense.
Yeah.
Side to side.
Yeah, and an example of some of the information that's missing is the erosion control plan relative to the sewer system, whether or not the septic system will get approved by East Shore District Health. And there's no grading really shown around the house. And I would imagine that if you're proposing to put the house partially in the wetland, you would want to do some level of filling, or else you're gonna have wetland soils up against your foundation. So there's a decent amount of missing information from the site plan, and I understand that they're trying to get something before the commission to take a look at, but it is still very rough what we're looking at right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of back to where I was before. We need more information before we can move forward on this, and that certainly helps us from a time standpoint as well in scheduling the hearing, if there is a hearing ultimately determined, as well as as well as having the soil scientist here to answer questions regarding, you know, the septic system and the movement of that. I think we've got an incomplete record here.
So more information may negate the need for a public hearing? Is that what we're thinking, or?
If things move and that number changes, yes. The question is, how likely is it that number is gonna significantly move?
Well, but I think that the number is here, right?
Right.
So we've got disturbed wetland area of
924.
924.
So is it up to us to make a determination if that's significant enough for a public hearing based on our regulations? Is that pretty much
I
where we
think
are?
based on regulations and past practice.
Right.
Yeah. The commission want to take a roll call on the significant activity? Is that where everybody's head is at? Yes? Okay.
So just before we do that, I would, if folks have their regulations and can pull them, I think for any motion, I would strongly encourage folks to use the regulations.
Well, you've read into the record the regulations.
When they say, I just have a question,
Mhm.
I'm just simple here.
Mhm.
When they say significant impact, on that, does it have a number? It has to be 0, is that what you're saying? If it's 5 feet, is that significant? If you're in the wetland, I'm just trying to say, is there a
Right.
number it has to be? Does it have to be 0?
No.
No. So at what number is considered significant? 500?
So that's
900?
what we're gonna,
2,000?
right. So,
Do you know? I don't know.
yeah, so that's what because it's not a number.
It's not a number
It's
in there.
it's a definition, and this is what we are bound to follow.
Right, but to me, I'm reading.
We're telling the engineer if we could just get it
Yeah.
down to less than a certain number.
So I guess there's no number, is what
Right.
they
It's not a
think.
number.
So
Right.
if she thinks 900 is significant,
Right.
and he thinks 50 is significant, it's significant to each person.
No,
That
well,
that becomes the review, though, for the feasible and prudent.
Right.
As you look at how else can I move this, those numbers will change.
Right, so.
And you maybe had 3 alternatives, and the number
Right.
went to 400, it went to, you know.
Right, so what I'm saying is, I'm just trying to think, do I do another perk test? Do I
Before
do
we
this
try to move
before,
it.
you know what I mean? Do I perk it? And, because I really, honestly, talking to these engineers, I don't think there's much they can move it anymore. I really don't. I don't, so I'm just trying to play the devil's advocate here and be prepared for this is it. I think he's moved it and tweaked it and moved it, and we moved it higher, but it's just not. Now, do I perk the new septic? Or do, you know, if I don't wanna go back to the old one, because he thought this was better.
Would you
Which the-
design a different septic system to the extent that you had a different square footprint that you needed to consider? You know, using different galleys, using different,
He said he could definitely make a smaller septic system.
David Lord said there's some new products on the market where they could.
So if that's, I don't know if that's what he's put on there,
Right.
you know? So what I have to do is I have to talk to Dave Lord and see if they have another plan. And if it's-
well, let us have this first deliberation.
Okay, that's fine.
So, and so that you know, part of this process is always an aim, well, it's an aim to never be arbitrary and capricious, right? So it is to follow what the regulation says and to follow our past historical practice so that we can be as consistent and predictable as possible. So just so you know, it's
Right.
not,
But
it's
I'm
not
trying
like
to
what he
do your
feels and what,
process.
you know, it's like,
I'm trying to
Yep.
navigate your process.
Yep, that's
So
totally
this is
fair.
new, and I just want to do it as best I can.
yeah.
It's working with a lot. So just let me know what I have to do, and
See,
I will do it.
I still can't get by that this one had no disturbance, this one.
Oh, because I know what happened.
Well, they did
They
the
moved
wet,
the wetland.
They did the
Oh,
flagging
okay.
after.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
that-
I get it
wetland
now.
expanded.
That's, I couldn't get my head around
They
that.
did
They
the, they did
expand-
the
expanded
flagging
in 30 years.
Okay.
Because
So-
everybody else has built and everybody else
To
has.
clarify, the wetlands may have expanded over the past 30 years, very possible, very likely, but my understanding, looking at the reference map, is that the wetlands on the original site plan that was submitted were based off of town mapping, so that would have been the NRCS wetland
Okay,
layer, which
I
is
get it.
very, very approximate.
It's general,
It's done on a
right.
I
large
get it.
scale,
I
and
get
it's
it.
not meant to be used on a site-by-site
I get it.
basis.
So, do we have any, like, other applications in our, that we've looked at and either had public hearings or not had public hearings based on the square footage of wetland disturbance that we could line up with this one?
So, I think, there's a reason why there's not a number in the regulations.
Mhm.
And it's based on the circumstances of the site, what's being proposed. I can't swear to it, but I'm pretty sure the commission has had public hearings in the past based on possible significant impact without any direct wetland impact. So it's not a specific number necessarily.
Okay. Does anyone, I guess we just could go from our memory, or?
So the-
I think you have to think about the criteria that
Right.
Commissioner Boda read aloud
Yep.
and whether you think any of those apply. And that's the criteria that you're considering.
Well,
Or you
if
can
I
request
recall,
an extension of the time frame to open the public hearing.
Go ahead, if you recall.
If I recall Commissioner Boda's reading of the regulation, you know, there were a number of areas in which this could qualify as a significant activity. So do I think the plan as presented on the August
August 12th.
12th, the plan qualified as a significant impact on the wetlands, my vote would be yes. I would also add to that, that I think that there is so much, there are so many possible moving parts on this application that we could see this change considerably by the time we consider it at the next meeting.
Based on all the different factors.
I certainly understand wanting to keep the ball rolling, but I also think it's important for like I was saying before, the applicant to consider whether or not it would be appropriate to withdraw and resubmit once you have a site plan. Just because if it's a moving target, it starts to confuse the commission looking at too many different plans. And also because statutorily, they can only take a certain amount of time to review your application. So if you get to the final site plan at the final meeting that they can consider your application and they still have unanswered questions, then they can't make a decision if they don't have all the information they need. So if you get all the information you need together and then resubmit your application, that might be beneficial, but talk with your engineer and your soil scientists and see what time frame it's gonna take them to get you that information, and then make a decision. And you can ask me if you have any questions regarding that.
And they might be, I mean, I'm glad that Jamie's saying that. Honestly, they might be able to get you out of the wetlands, in which case we might be able to just not have to move to a public hearing at all.
So just come back the next meeting. No, I gotta resubmit to you.
So you would withdraw.
No, you'd have to withdraw.
You would withdraw and then resubmit, and
Do I need to pay another $800?
so that's part of what I wanted to mention, is if you withdraw and resubmit, the commission usually does grant a partial fee reduction for the resubmission. And I wanted to mention that in case the commission had any further feedback that they wanted to provide you, in case you decided you wanted to go that route.
Yeah, I think that, I don't want to speak for the commission, but I feel like that we could, if you were to withdraw, do what needs to be done and resubmit, from my perspective, I think that I would be, yeah, I would be very willing to do the fee reduction, maybe just do the deep fee, and let's just start.
Start anew, maybe
Yeah.
A4 would be allowed. Maybe you will. I don't know, give it one more chance. Maybe you'll vote.
So, yeah,
best I can.
the commission has 65 days to open the public hearing, so I think we have time to let the applicant decide what their best course of action is, and then if need be, they can grant an extension for the public hearing if they decide to move forward with the current application, or if they decide to withdraw and submit once they have everything. They know that they can get a fee reduction, and not have to be out the application fee.
Any commissioner have concerns about the fee reduction?
No, I agree with Suzanne. Commissioner Bottom.
So I just to clarify, the fee has been submitted based off of the area disturbance outside of the wetlands. So I would say that crediting the current application fee minus perhaps the $60 deep fee towards not to go below the $60 deep fee towards a future application, because the current fee does not include any direct wetland impact. So if the application does include direct wetland impacts, that additional portion of the fee should still be submitted.
Commissioner Degerman had a comment.
I'm just gonna make a comment that you probably noticed how, in the discussions before your property, that there were properties that were being talked about that didn't even have wetlands on them. And there are a lot of questions. So if you have a property that you want to put a house that has a corner actually in the wetland, you can imagine that all the plans for how that water is gonna come down any hill and be taken care of, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, has to be really, 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 really clearly explained, so that if we look at it, we know what we're talking about.
Right.
Okay.
I understand. This is the property I have, this is what I got to try and work with, and I paid 30 years of taxes on it, thinking this is mine. So I'll do what has to be done, because I kind of need to live there when I retire. So that's my goal. And I do not plan to clear cut anything. I don't even need a lawn on it. I really just want a house with a porch. Then I'll be honest with you, I swear, I just have saved this for all these years for this. So I'm gonna try and plan it the best I can.
Well, with that kind of goal in mind, ball's in your court, good luck.
I'm gonna try.
Yep,
What else can I do for nothing?
thank you.
Appreciate all your
Yep.
work that's
Thank you so much.
trying to figure it out.
Inland Wetland 210606, 8 High Plains Road. Regrading of the yard, removal of trees, and the replacement of a rear deck. Good evening.
Good evening.
Is this?
What number is this? I'm sorry.
C, 3C.
Good evening. Is this on?
Yeah, it is. I don't know. It is.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Do
So you
these,
can hear me.
It-
these pictures go with this?
Yeah, it's, yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
it's working. Okay. For the record, I'm Jen Benno, biologist with Soil Science and Environmental Services. And I was hoping that the surveyor would also be here for this project, but he's not here. So I can only give you a small amount of information. Basically, I was retained by the property owner to provide a planting plan, and that would be to provide shade and buffer to the wetland area. And that's after they had basically cleared all the vegetation from the backyard and also installed fill within the backyard. And I don't know if you've seen it in person or if you've seen the pictures. I think you have some pictures in the file. And so you can see from the file that there is, I think, 2 to 3 feet of fill and then some large rocks adjacent to the wetland area. Scott Stevens is a registered professional soil scientist with our firm, Soil Science and Environmental Services, delineated the wetlands in May 2021, and you should have a copy of his soil report, I think. So according to Paul Stoll, the surveyor for the project site, is approximately 69 square feet of wetland on the property. And as I mentioned, vegetation was clear cut, fill was placed right to the edge of the wetland, and according to Paul, the town has requested, I don't know if it was you guys that requested it, where some agency requested that the fill be pulled back to a 3-to-1 slope instead of the existing 2-to-1 slope, and to remove some of the large boulders. So that's reflected on his plan sheet. And then I was asked to provide buffer and wetland plantings in order to provide shade to the wetland and also additional wildlife habitat. So what I've done is recommended some native, non-invasive shrub and tree plantings. There's really not a lot of room in the wetland on the property since it's just 69 square feet. So we're looking at putting 3 shrubs in that area and no trees because they're in close proximity to other mature trees. So we're looking at shrubs in the wetland area, and we're recommending viburnums, which seem to do very well in this part of the state. I'm working on another project in Brantford, and the viburnums are doing great. And then for the buffer planting area, that would be on the 3-to-1 slope, which is pulled back from the wetland. We're recommending 6 shrub plantings and 2 tree plantings. The tree plantings are river birches. They grow fairly quickly, so they'll provide some shade. And then at the top of the slope, we're recommending a split rail fence, and that would be to prevent future intrusion into that area. Also, we're recommending that some sort of seed mixture be spread over the 3-to-1 graded slope, and that would be to provide stabilization and also some wildlife habitat. Seed mixtures contain wildflower mixes and that sort of thing. So that would help out and improve the visual aesthetics out there too. We also made some recommendations in the report that any erosion and sedimentation controls approved by the town being properly installed and maintained throughout the duration until everything is stabilized. There are some invasive species out there. I saw some multiflora rose, so they're gonna have to take care of that for a few years until the plantings can become established and outcompete any invasives. And then we also recommend that there's some follow-up site inspections just to document the survival rate of the plantings, and also to document any invasive species growth or erosion issues, anything like that. So that's my part.
Jamie, have you reviewed this?
I have, and I do have a staff report. Sorry I did not get it out earlier, but in case the commission wanted to act on it, I did draft up some possible conditions of approval. Sorry, I thought I had an extra copy. But basically, they're kind of our standard conditions: silt fence inspection prior to further earth disturbance, pre-planting meeting prior to planting, final inspection. Silt fence shall be installed at base of proposed revised slope prior to start of work to the satisfaction of the inland wetland agent. I threw that in there because there is a silt fence shown on the site plan, but it should be extended the entire length of the slope. But I feel like that could be handled through a condition of approval if the commission is satisfied taking that route. Plantings per the planting recommendations by Soil Science and Environmental Services, Inc., dated August 3rd, 2021, shall be monitored and reports submitted by the end of the initial growing season and annually thereafter for 5 years, documenting at least 85% survival of the vegetation and control of invasive species. Goes into the bond requirements and planting plan alterations. This is again our standard language, so if the commission wants this condition, they should consider whether it's whether the bond is required and if 5 years is the appropriate time frame. I think your plan said 2 years.
Yeah, and that's just different towns have different number of years. Some it's 2, some it's 3, some it's 5. I think it depends on the case too.
Yeah, sometimes the commission reduces it, but I'm not sure if this is one of those instances. And then that an as-built survey shall be submitted showing revised grading and installation of plantings and split rail fence to document compliance with permit. And just to backtrack real quick, if the commission decided they wanted to stay with 5 years, but maybe give a little bit of a leeway. In the past, the commission has also approved for the agent to do some of the inspections, particularly towards the end of the reporting period. Just another thought.
This question may be outdated, but in one of the photos, you know, where all that dirt was brought in, and it went up, it goes up to the base of trees. Did it go, do you have any idea of how many feet up those tree trunks it went? No.
I cannot answer that.
Then, Abby, do you remember looking, I mean, because this report is all about tree plantings, it's not about like changing the.
Are you looking at the pictures right now?
Yeah, from 6/23/21.
Over your shoulder.
Yeah. All of that. I was just looking at that. Remember we had that problem when they killed the trees? It looks pretty much like that might be correct.
Yeah, I think that's a pile of material in front.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually over the roots.
Okay, thanks.
So for people that couldn't hear my response, I don't think that the material is actually over the roots of the trees. I think there's a little pile of material in between the foreground of the picture and the background.
I think it's a good planting plan. I didn't see this earlier, so, but I would also agree that we would do the 5 years of monitoring. But otherwise, I'm amenable.
Do you have any recommendation regarding the bond?
Yeah, well, say more specifically, like the length of it?
Either the length or, yeah, so we already said 5 years, so.
5 years, yeah.
5 years in the standard practice, again, is to request that the applicant submit an estimate and that it gets reviewed by staff.
Yeah.
And that's in the,
Yep.
yep.
When was this cleared? How long ago?
Wasn't it
Late
last year?
spring, early summer, I want to
Oh,
say.
so just recently?
Yeah.
I have a question. There were a lot of trees that were taken down, right? Wasn't it? It was like 12 or 14 or 16 trees. Is this enough to replace the shade for the wetland?
Well, in addition to those plantings, there's also going to be, they're called green giant arborvitaes, and supposedly they get very tall and they grow very fast. So there's going to be a line of those along the back property boundary. Can I look at your map, please, for a second?
Writing is tiny.
It's so tiny. Did you actually have a regulation about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, here are the green giant arborvitaes. I'll just come back one second. Right
Okay.
here. So these will also provide shade. But yeah, the trees, I have 2 trees right here, so they'll grow up. And then you'll have the 3 shrub things in the wetland. It's gonna take time, obviously. These are mature trees that were taken down, and now we're replacing it with something that's 3 feet in the wetland and, 6 feet on the slope. So it's gonna take a little time for it to return. But I think definitely having the shrub plantings in the wetland will help.
Okay.
This is certainly actionable if we choose so. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the plan for inland wetland 21.06.06 at 8 High Plains Road. Oh, wait, no. Okay, sorry. And that we include the conditions as outlined. Jamie, you don't want me to read all this.
You can just reference those.
Okay. Provided by staff, and specifically that the planting plan should be monitored for a total of 5 years, and that the homeowner will provide an estimate for the bond, provide that to staff.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions? Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You made that easy. Usually I'm not on my own.
We can make it harder.
No, I
All right.
appreciate it.
2107-404, 155 Cherry Hill Road, relocation of existing shed and construction of a patio and the installation of fence.
Hello. Kevin, I'm the property owner, my wife Jess with it.
Excuse me, 1 second. On the agenda, it's 155 Cherry Hill. On the application, it's 175.
Nope, that's two separate
Two
applications.
different ones? Oh.
Yep.
Do we have a plan for 155?
Yeah,
We do,
That's right.
it's
It looks
from
like this.
previous
Oh, thank you.
meeting materials.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry.
From the last meeting, there was just a couple follow-up things that I owed to adding the changes, so I got that off to them, as well as you want to see a sketch of where the shed is currently positioned on the wetland. And I provided those, and I guess we're here to talk about that came through the mail now.
Do you know if that the copy says emails me?
I brought one copy, this is a sketch of where it currently is, so.
Oh,
he wants
thank you.
to share and look.
Did you email that over by chance?
And I only have.
If not,
I
I can
did not.
see, I can explain. No, that's okay. Do you mind if I take it?
Yeah, you can have
Supplemental
it. Yeah,
materials, so if you guys
absolutely.
are trying
Thank
to
you.
I'll read it
share,
and I'll give it to you.
a narrative and then two supplemental documents.
Jamie? Is this what we're talking about?
So, yeah, that's a sketch of the approximate current location of the shed. And then there's
This is-
a site plan with the proposed location of the
This one,
shed.
just facing it outside.
Thank you.
So just as a recap, the project is moving the shed and installing a fence and a patio. And then, at the last meeting, maintenance of the wetland area, was also brought up. So that's what the Yukon documents were submitted to address.
Is this shaded area the patio? I'm assuming next to the house.
Off the back of the house.
Right here. That's the
Correct.
proposed patio, or it's already there?
Proposed.
Jamie, I don't remember talking about the patio. Can you talk about that? Was that last time?
It was mentioned, but I don't think it was really discussed.
Okay.
Yeah, it was on the plan before, too.
Would you like it discussed?
Does anyone have the new plan that he?
Is this?
I think Peter,
No, I have the existing.
Is it this?
No.
no, yeah, I think
It's
that's
the
what.
one he brought tonight, the
Yeah.
homeowner brought
That's
tonight.
the sketch of the,
Oh.
Where the shed is.
Last time you guys asked where the existing
Where
shed
the
was.
This is where it is,
Right.
and then what you have is where it's going.
Oh, so,
So that's, the one you're holding now is where it currently is. The
Okay.
plan you have is proposed.
so they're moving it this way.
What I'm,
So can you address the patio?
Here you go. You want
and
to look at
also,
it past that?
before you do that, what I remember from last time was that you had a rain,
Rain garden?
that was staying full or something, and you were
Correct.
gonna talk to the engineer, and et cetera. So can you address that as well as the patio?
Jim Freddy, Crystal Engineering. I was at the last meeting. I was no swimming problem, so I went out and inspected the rain garden about a week after the meeting, and it was full of water. We did actually walk to the lot next door, which is only about 50 yards away, and that one draining out the way it's supposed to. So I think the soils are just so different in this site that we couldn't possibly test it everywhere. His lot, for some reason, the soils are just so tight. If you recall, I mean, this property had been manicured lawn for many, many years. We were as surprised as anyone else when it got flagged, that the wetlands were so extensive. You know, in regards to the shed, if I was out there, you can't tell that that corner of the property is actually wetland by inspection. You would never know. So, to that end, and not specific to this project, but in general, I had a conversation with the engineering department, and I said, you know, you guys want us to store water on the site, but if you have a site that's flat, and you don't have any relief, and the soils are just not accepting the water, what are we supposed to do? And, no, good question. So I said, well, if we went back to downspouts with splash pads or stones or something, so long as we weren't creating a erosion issue and had it all separated, like people have been doing it for over 100 years, does that make more sense, especially now that there's lawn established? The water would have more of a chance to get evaporated and into the topsoil, and because it's not all concentrated in one place. And they said they would support that, but because this lot had been approved by the commission, that you guys would have to support that change to go from the rain garden to individual splash pads. So here we are, and I will tell you that I think on at least 2 other ones this will probably go up because there's a lot of foot of grade change across the whole lot. So there really isn't an opportunity for it to put in, say, like an under drain and have a daylight somewhere, because there isn't anywhere daylight.
I'd like to tell you that was helpful.
So this is what you're proposing to do, is put a I'm sorry, I wasn't here last month. You're proposing to maintain a meadow there?
So where my shed is, right, so where the shed is, right, it's 196 square feet. The part that's on the wetlands, I was asked to come back with a restoration plan, and the rest of the property behind here, we discussed last time, was to be maintained as a meadow. So in alignment with the rest of the property being maintained, the restoration is going to be in line with creating a meadow in the 120 square feet that's there.
So
that's
everything east of the wetland line?
correct. Yep.
And it's not,
Outside the fence?
Yeah,
what?
outside the fence.
Outside the fence.
Yeah, well, it's flagged here, the wetland boundary.
Yep.
So everything, what would be this little shaded?
Yep.
Let me shade it here,
Correct.
that would be, you would turn that into a meadow?
Yeah.
But it's not a wet meadow, is it? Because it's like,
I
the
can drive
wetland
my car
that's
across
dry?
it today and not sink at all. It's dry.
Yeah, so when I was out there, it was a week after that horrendous Friday morning rainstorm we had, and we walked all over the yard, and it wasn't anything squishy. So it's not an area that stays wet. With the rain garden. So I think the topsoil is taking the water, it's just when you get into the lower layers, it's just not taking it.
and the rain gutters kind of pressed into it.
I missed a good meeting, I don't know. Huh?
In the patio?
So it's a roughly a proposed 1,000 square foot paver patio off the back of the house is what we're proposing right now. Living space, grill space, little fire pit space. Pretty standard, just brick type patio.
And it's on a level area? I can't remember.
Yeah, the whole yard,
Yeah.
like Jim was just saying, I mean, the whole grade of the yard's like a 1 foot slope over
Yeah.
the whole yard, so it's pretty flat.
So, and you didn't do anything back there, it's just the shed was there?
Yeah.
You wanted to put it?
Prefab shed.
Prefab shed, I placed
Yeah,
there.
so you wanted to put in the patio, so you were here because you wanted to put the patio in,
So-
and then it was noticed that the shed was in the wetland? No,
So- so
no, I
this
should
started-
just back out of this.
No, I'll explain to you. So this started where Jamie notified me that the shed was close to a wetland line, and
Yeah.
I had to approve whether it was or wasn't.
Okay.
So that's what started it, and then through this process, I learned about the 100-foot review area and all the other fun stuff that we have to go through, and said, as we're doing this, let's just go tackle everything we want to do the house at once. So we put on the drawing the patio, the fence, and then to answer the mail from the original question is the relocation of the shed.
Oh. You had to move a shed, and you're like, let's do a patio.
Do it all.
You remember if you give a mouse a cookie, that
Ye-
book, that's this.
Yes, I see. And so the patio would be pavers, so it'll infiltrate? Will it, do you know if the soil there will take? I guess it was already grass.
I mean, it's already grass now,
Yeah,
and it's not soft, so I don't think it's gonna be an issue.
And you're just gonna replant that corner, and this is your plan, kind of, sort of? And you're doing it yourself?
Yeah.
So,
And you're gonna move the shed.
Yep.
And right now, that's just grass?
Correct.
The shed is on grass, or was it on
No,
grass?
it's on
No.
3/4 inch
That's
process.
what I thought, yeah. You're moving that and.
Yeah, I gotta move all that, yep.
one question I had for clarification is what kind of seed mix are you looking to use for the
So,
shed?
On the bottom of that, planting a meadow, there's a bunch of references of where to get seed from, so I'll
Sure.
reach out to one of them and get something through there. And I
Okay.
have a landscape architect I can reach out to and get recommendations from as well.
Okay. Yeah, I took a quick look at that, and those are good places.
Yep.
And then do you administratively go out and check once this is all done?
Yeah, yep, that would be part of the process. Bless you.
Thank you.
And I'm just gonna bring it up because it also came up at the last meeting, relative to the fence location, and I think you wanted to maintain a strip, and
Yeah.
how much area would that be, and I don't know what the commission's thoughts were on that.
So, yeah, I guess for those who missed the meeting last time, we discussed on the back side of the fence, on the outside of the property line, being able to maintain so vegetation isn't growing through the fence. Right, because the meadow is the 1 to 2 times a year to actually mow that, but to be able to go cut around that fence line just for aesthetics of the property and cleanliness of keeping the fence there is what I discussed.
You're gonna put a fence behind the shed?
There's a fence
So-
shown on the
Fence
site.
follows the property line, and then we had,
This?
yeah, so the black line, it literally follows, so here's the note. Sorry, here's the note for the fence, so it follows the property line, and then we followed the wetland line over on that corner as well. So the fence comes out there, follows the property line, comes over,
So here, yes.
yeah, so behind it, yep,
It would go, right.
correct.
So
But
you,
I'm saying all the way around, even on this backside here of the fence, we're gonna just maintain all around that as well.
but that's not your property, right? If this is following the property line, so you can't really maintain outside of your property, right?
Well, this is my neighbor's side, yeah, I can talk to him, but it's really on this side here that's right in my land, but in the wetlands area, is keeping this maintained is really the big question, because once I get over here, it's fine.
You're wanting to mow this?
Yep.
Like once a year, like November 1?
I don't know if it's gonna be November 1,
Well,
but a couple
like-
times a year, yes.
Like similar to,
Similar to a meadow maintenance, so that's where all that,
Yeah.
the meadow reference comes from.
Yeah,
Yeah, typically they're twice a year.
yeah, like March, November.
Well, it depends. It's either, if it's too soft in the spring, you're not supposed to do it then, so I gotta do it later in the fall. So it's really, I can't give you a firm date. It would depend
No,
on
the ish.
I think discussion last time was when the land trust mows,
So you guys
because
are
there's
gonna hear
part of the
a
property
presentation on that next.
in the area is land trust.
Yeah, they're here to talk about that.
They're here to talk about
after.
that afterwards. So I can mirror what they do.
I had asked if they would move the fence so that he could mow on his, on his property and not on the
Yeah.
next property, but.
Yeah, I'm not a planning and zoning person, but that's always been my understanding, that you have to allow
But
room on
agreed.
the outside of the fence.
Let me
that's-
clarify. In this hard wetlands area, I'd like to maintain the fence in here. This I can just do with a weed whacker, but on the back side in here, I just don't want everything getting too unsightly.
So the fence is going this way, not this way?
Correct, and the last time I was told I was not allowed to put a fence through the wetland
Okay,
area,
so-
so it's following the wetlands line.
Okay, so then that is your property outside of it?
Oh, yeah, no, I own back to this pin.
Right, okay.
So this is Mother May I to mow my lawn.
Further concerns, reservations? Seem reasonable?
Historically, that wetland area has been maintained as lawn, so, I think maintaining it as a meadow is a nice compromise.
Somebody want to make a motion on 210704?
I did not prepare a staff report for this, but I would recommend that there be a final inspection at minimum. And then I don't know, as far as the stormwater modifications, if the commission wants to consider that as part of this application as well.
We don't really have anything on
It's
the
not shown
record
on the
regarding the
plans.
stormwater.
As far as changing to downspout.
Right.
But
So is there anything from the original plan that, right, we've now seen it doesn't work, that classifies as on the record, or we have to resubmit something?
Well, there isn't anything on
Or
here.
is that something that the commission would be comfortable with me handing administratively as a
Right, that's what I'm
modification of the
thinking, but I'm saying
original
there's nothing on the
permit?
plan that talks about the
Right, yeah,
changes that.
Right,
that-
so other than, other than Ray asking the question last time.
Right.
On record, so,
Right.
and we looked into it with the engineering department since then. So, no, there isn't a plan, but it was discussed.
Yeah, my only comment was, so that when we do the inspection, final inspection, there's something to compare it with, all right? But I'm comfortable with Jamie doing this administratively. Anybody else feel similarly?
I agree.
I agree.
I guess my only
Okay, I
caution
don't-
would be is that I don't think I should approve this permit administratively
She can't,
since
because
it's before the
it's-
commission and we're talking about maintenance of the wetland area, so I can't do that. However, if you were comfortable with me approving the change to downspouts administratively, I could do that.
She can't because of that
Okay.
corner. And I think that the motion, it has to clarify why this is okay, given where the wetland line is.
Why, what's okay?
But it's okay for the activity in the wetland.
Okay. I'm gonna need help because I don't have it all in my head. So I will make a motion that we approve inland wetland 21.07.04, 155 Cherry Hill Road. Relocation of existing shed, construction of patio, and installation of fence. Along with the associated planting plan or planting of a meadow. And that the agent will the homeowner will submit additional information about the downspout to staff for final approval. And that this application has been received positively because the wetland section of the property is and has been maintained as lawn. And this would constitute an improvement to the wetland in this case. In this item. So,
Do we want to add that it's going to be maintained as a meadow?
and that this wetland pocket will be maintained as a meadow?
That's everything, right? And I think there's gonna be final approval.
Can we get a second and then
You
discussion?
second? Yeah,
I'll second it.
no discussion.
Did you get the part in there about final inspection?
Now we get to.
Oh, that final inspection will be
By-
handled
by staff.
administratively by Jamie?
And to add to that, you should also mention that the standard conditions and general
Apply.
provisions of all permits apply.
I will accept both of those additions to the motion.
Secondary.
I still
Given
second
that,
it.
it's still seconded. Sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? No.
Thanks.
Yep.
Peter, I gotta take a 2-minute break.
2-minute break, okay.
I'll be right back. You can start without me.
We're adjourned for 2 minutes.
I'm gonna stand up.
I'm sorry, what?
The jurisdictional ruling request.
Copies for that? No.
I didn't think of that.
Sorry.
But it's in the draft. This is what we got.
music stops, so hopefully you'll be ready.
Okay, everybody find a chair.
Thank you. All right, we're back on the record. Let's see, we have jurisdictional ruling request for 89 Todd's Hill Road, 99 Todd's Hill Road subdivision, open space, maintenance of a meadow, including mowing and the clearing of invasive shrubs.
Just real quick, sorry, Bill, before you start. I did not make copies of this. If you have access to the Dropbox, the materials are in the Dropbox. Peter has a copy. You guys can pass it around.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay, for the record, Bill Warren, 246 Pleasant Point Road. Yes, the land trust is asking for a ruling that mowing and clearing invasives with a motorized walk-behind bush hog constitutes conservation of soil vegetation, etc., which is considered non-regulated use of the wetlands. The commission's probably pretty familiar with this from the subdivision application. The open space is a little over 24 acres. The land trust acquired it in 2020, but we haven't really had a chance to get on it yet. We agreed with the developers that, except for monitoring, limited monitoring, would stay off until they had completed construction, at least of the houses that abut the open space. They were worried, I think reasonably, that they didn't want people walking around and getting on constructions. So we're just becoming familiar with the property ourselves. And the only thing we're asking for, the only thing we're planning on doing that brings us here tonight is to do a mowing of the herbaceous areas and the places where there's invasive shrubs coming in, to be able to go in there with bush hog. I'm here tonight with two other land trust volunteers, Matt Reed, who heads up our management team and has a lot of experience with the bush hog on other fields that the land trust owns, and Adrian Bonenberger, who's the track steward and also a member of the Conservation Commission. And if you have questions related to some of those things, they may be.
Your mic dropped.
Yeah.
Is the button,
Is the
is the
button
light
on?
still green?
I think it is, but
It's working.
no.
I just, okay.
That's
Can you hear me
good.
now?
Yeah.
Tested it before. Okay, so with me are land trust volunteers, Matt Reed, who heads up the management team, and Adrian Bonenberger, track steward, and also a member of the Conservation Commission, which I'll be mentioning at the end of my presentation. Historically, this property, this area, has been extensively mowed and also ditched. Going back, I don't know how many decades, I'm pretty sure that it was maintained as an estate at the time that I moved to Brantford in the early 1980s, and it probably goes back quite a ways before that. So it's hardly a pristine site, but perhaps remarkably, given the way it was maintained, there's actually quite a bit of good habitat out there. As Jim Preddy mentioned, the soils are pretty impervious, so you have sort of a perched wetland that the water doesn't infiltrate very much. And we've been able to identify on just a very cursory inspection at least 4 wetland plants that are growing in the meadow, and a bunch of other wildflowers and things. It's got some nice diversity there now. We think that it has the potential for really improving the diversity, and but we're not talking about that tonight. We're just talking about the mowing and the invasives. So I'm sorry that you don't all have copies of this. I provided a list of the supporting documents, and I'll quickly run through what's there. I included the subdivision plan from the original application, which shows the wetlands boundaries. And then I also included a existing conditions map that also shows the lots on it. And you can see on that and on an aerial photograph that was taken in 2019, you can actually see where the ditches are that were channeling water down towards the pond. Before they get to the pond, they all go into culverts of various sizes. So around the pond, you have an area that is probably all filled, although it's got great vegetation growing on it, but I doubt that the water ever ponds up there. And I've included 4 photographs from different places. One is in the center of the property looking towards the pond, and it shows a fairly typical scattering of mostly autumn olive or multi-floor roads. We actually found that the deer are doing a pretty good job of keeping the multi-floor from getting more than about 4 feet tall. That place is heavily used by the deer. On 2 trips we flushed, in one case, a large buck, in another case, 2 does. So the wildlife is using it. That's going to be a challenge moving forward because probably most of those invasive species were established from deer droppings. So we will be moving forward dealing with this issue probably continuously. The density of the shrubs varies from, scattered maybe 5 to 10 feet apart in the center, and up on the hillside coming down from Parish Farm Road, where the Land Trust owns sort of a kind of a golf club driver head shaped piece that goes downhill. We've got some fairly dense thickets of autumn olive too. Matt's looked at those, and he says that we're going to be able to handle just about everything that he sees with the bush hog. Probably for the taller ones, they'll do some cutting with loppers or small hand saws, and then go after the stumps with the bush hog.
Can I stop you there, Bill?
Yeah.
Are we here looking for this jurisdictional ruling because when the permit, I guess, for the subdivision was approved, we didn't address the meadow condition at that time?
I don't know. I was told that I should submit an application for this. And by my reading of the regulations, this is something that constitutes a permitted, non-regulated activity. So I'm submitting a request for that ruling, but I also wanted to present enough information about what was there so that the commission would have an idea what we want to do now, and then say a little bit about our vision of where we may go with the management in the future. I see the commission as hopefully a working partner in this. Obviously, you have an interest in how it's working. We may find, depending on how, if there are wet areas that we feel are appropriate to maintain for limited public access, we would come back with a request for a permit to put in a boardwalk or something like that if it's necessary to raise it up. But generally what we want to do in terms of any disturbance is just to limit it to mowing, probably once a year, probably in the fall at a time when there's little water surface. I will say that it really varies a lot. I mean, I have walked on the property several times, and places that were apparently dry in the late summer or fall when I went back in the spring, and not after a particularly heavy rain or anything, were squishy. So that's something that we are going to have to be aware of.
Okay, so then, Jamie, will you help me understand then the nature of, I guess, Bill's, or Land Trust application here for a mowing a meadow? Is this an as-of-right versus permitted activity discussion, or?
Yeah, so, kind of my initial thought on this was that there was no maintenance plan submitted with the subdivision. However, the subdivision approval was subdivision without regulated activity, so you're not really looking at regulated activity. But also, they didn't know who was gonna get the open space at the time, so depending on who got the open space would depend on how it's managed. If it was Regional Water Authority, it probably would be an extremely passive. There would be no recreational use of the property, which is now one of the goals of the property. So it's very fair and reasonable that it was not necessarily considered at that time. So the question before the commission now is, I told Bill Horn that he should submit an application based off of my experience with past practice in the commission. And then I got an interesting email suggesting that it was non-regulated. And I looked at what he said, and I'm like, okay, yeah, you definitely have an argument. Submit an as-of-right non-regulated use request, and the commission can consider it. I said it would be definitely a discussion because it is not commission past practice, in my experience, to handle an application like this in this manner, but I certainly think it's worth the consideration, and if the commission were to make that decision to state why they're making that decision and maybe provide some guidance for moving forward in the what kind of application or what kind of activities might be treated the same way. So as part of the discussion I've had with the, I'll say applicant, even though I'm not sure it's the right word, there is no proposed ground disturbance. It's all cutting. They're planning on doing it when the ground is as dry as possible, so that hopefully there's no ground disturbance from the equipment. And the section that he was referencing is in section 4 of the regulations. It is
4.2.
4.2. The following operations and uses shall be permitted as a non-regulated use in wetlands and watercourses, provided they do not disturb the natural and indigenous character of the wetland or watercourse by removal or deposition of material, alteration or obstruction of water flow, or pollution of the wetland or watercourse per section CGS 22A 40B. The agency shall make the determination as to whether a proposed activity meets the definition that it is a non-regulated use or is a regulated activity. And then A is conservation of soil, vegetation, water, fish, shellfish, and wildlife. So that would be the applicable language, and that basically relates directly back to the statutes. In the past, the commission has required an application for invasives management. And usually the commission waives it down to the $60 state deep fee. I think there's different types of invasive management projects. This one's just cutting. If you're going in and removing the upper layer of soil, I would say that's probably definitely clearly separate project. And so it really depends, I think, on the extent of activity, but then it also depends on the commission's interpretation. And it is the agency that makes the decision. It is not self-determining.
Is the mowing and clearing two separate activities?
It's two separate activities in the sense that the mowing is done with a tractor and typical rig for cutting hay and herbaceous, and they can't deal with the woody stuff. So we would have eventually, we hope to be able to suppress the woody stuff to a point that it can all be done with a tractor and a typical cutting rate. It's not clear to me exactly how well that's going to work. It's a work in progress. I mean, we're constantly dealing with regrowth of woodies on our upland fields, and I expect it won't be any different here. I did include.
So just in this initial.
In this initial one, we'll have a tractor in there mowing where they can get at, and then we'll have the land trust work crew with the walk behind Billy Goat. I have photographs of that. I mean, it's like an overgrown, push lawnmower, except it's motorized. Going in and basically, beating the stumps to pieces so that it goes down. And then you have regrowth to deal with. I also included at the end, just because I found it very interesting, a management plan for a wet meadow property up in Lincoln, Massachusetts. It was a 6-page detailed management plan. It discusses some things that we haven't used, but we might. They have glossy buckthorn that they're dealing with, which responds to cutting by regrowing very vigorously. So they're using spot burning to go in and get it. That's not something the land trust would attempt to do on itself, but we could probably find a contractor to do that if we felt that it was necessary. But we don't envision doing any grubbing. On some of our properties where the autumn olive has gotten to be 3 or 4 inches in diameter, Matt has worked with the person that mows the field to actually come in and pull the stumps out. So in that sense, there is a disturbance, but it's not grubbing, it's really just pulling out the stumps. But on our preliminary inspection, we didn't see anything that was going to require
Grubbing. Okay. Jamie, concerns about clarifying this as of right condition?
So I think my concern would be that the commission has a discussion, if that's what you determine that it is, explain why you're making that decision. I think part of it can be the fact that it's been brought to your attention, and then I think defining what it is that is being approved as a jurisdictional, jurisdictional ruling of non-regulated activity, and maybe identifying some of the activities that were mentioned. Well, I mean, it's already been mentioned that they come back for boardwalks if they decide they want to do that. But again, if you're comfortable with like the cutting, but you're not comfortable with the burning or whatever, then making that distinction. You can have conditions on the jurisdictional ruling of what is jurisdictional, what is non-regulated, and what might require a permit and or further review.
And we would definitely appreciate having that guidance.
To me, the mowing is kind of straightforward. And you could certainly see this being a repetitive need. Beyond that, it gets into how the other stuff is going to be gotten rid of or taken care of or cleared or whatever. And the diversity on approaches, I don't know that I can put in one single box, whereas mowing is kind of straightforward. So I guess I would lean to having mowing be something that would be a non-regulated activity. But the other stuff would need to come back before the commission. I don't know anybody else like that or not, but.
So just a quick clarification. So for something like an autumn olive, that wouldn't necessarily, like if it were to be need to be removed by the roots, I think if it were, I guess, if it couldn't be done by hand, like by, like a big tool, because they have those big, like those, the root removers, it might still work as of right, but I think that I would need to see like what that would look like before that was an as of right, to see what kind of disturbance would have to happen. If it was a small machine, then maybe that would be okay, but, so I think the mowing plus any removal of those small woody vegetation that could be done with like those big hand crank tools. I think that would also, go under as of right in this 4.2 A and B. I think, of course, like the boardwalk, anything like that would need to come back.
Other commissioner thoughts?
I was thinking along the lines of, would it be helpful to have, it's probably too specific, but a dimension, so you, when things get a certain size, you can't do them, but maybe the distinction is actually hand tools versus, for the bigger, the woody stuff. That anything that can be removed by hand tools is a better way of saying, than a diameter of whatever you're trying to pull out. But different shrubs have different root systems, and some.
Oh, I'm aware.
I know.
And woody of plant type A may be much tougher to cut through than
Right.
woody type B, so you're shaking your head, yes or no?
Can I make a comment?
Please, your name?
Matt Reed, 42 DeForest.
Sorry, can you use the microphone?
Yeah.
You don't have to use Yep, it should.
Yeah, Matt Reed, 42 DeForest Drive. I'm on the land trust, as Bill said. The thing with the autumn olive right now is we've got a little time. It's been growing for a couple of years. It's about 1.5 inches. I mean, and loads of it. And we can deal with that. If we let it go another year or two, then it's a whole different ball. And the thing with the billy goat, with the walk behind brush cutter, is that it's great for the edges. So we're able to, I mean, the tractor can mow, but he's got to stay away from a lot of stuff, particularly those drainage ditches. He can't get near that or he'll have a disaster. So with the billy goat, we can do all the edges around and make it safe for the tractor.
Okay, not being familiar with the billy goat, how close did that come to just being a lawnmower?
It's a lawnmower on steroids.
In the folder, there are some pictures of it.
No, it's just got a cutting, it's a thick blade.
So it would still be cutting
Yeah.
as opposed to anything else?
That's all it's doing.
Okay.
Here are the pictures.
And that
of
would
the
take
building.
care of those autumn olives that are
Well,
one and a
right now,
half.
we can run
You can
half
pass
of
that
it.
around. People can look at it.
It's noisy, but, and Bill didn't mention this, but it's our concern not to try to drag all of this, things that we are cutting, we have to cut with the hand tool, the bigger ones, that we not try to drag them off the property. Make piles, and basically it's habitat.
Yeah, but this also is something that would apply to everybody, not just you guys for this particular application. So as we look to put things in a box, et cetera, that's one of the concerns, is to make sure that we, still retain,
Fair and uniform?
yeah, fair and uniform practice.
Well, I would make one distinction between the land trust and most of the people that come in here for applications, which is that what we do is conservation. And what most of the people that come in here with applications that want to remove invasives is development and landscaping. And so that's.
Hence my concern.
Based on the language, I mean, someone would have to make a very good argument that it was conservation that they were doing.
Well, and I think the leaving the brush on site for additional habitat, I think that makes a difference, because it's not about tidying it up. It's about removing the invasive and then leaving it to rot and leave all the biomass where it is.
Is that what's happening here?
Yes, that's our intent.
So as I described earlier, I would say that the activities as described, the cutting, the removal of some of those shrubby, like the autumn olive, that those activities would fall under 4.2 A and B as of right activity, and that the land trust should come back for further guidance with issues around installation of a boardwalk or anything that is really going to cause earth movement, soil movement beyond of an invasive. Is that descriptive enough? Oh, I guess I need a second. And I will add that I am making this motion because the activity that would be occurring, yeah, I think I already said it, falls under 4.2, and that the goal is conservation of soil, vegetation, and water, fish, well, not fish, and wildlife. The fish. Are you here?
I'll second that motion.
For clarification, so the mowing, but not the brush hog? Or-
No, I think
No,
the
the
brush
brush
hog is
hog.
fine.
Okay.
It just can't, like, no backhoes.
And you're okay with them leaving the material?
Yeah, I want them to
as
leave the
they
material on
described?
site.
That's part of the deal.
Yeah. Yeah. No, not leave it on site, though. Just take-
And then just one more thing you might want to consider adding as far as the fair and uniform and consideration of conservation, and just making a comment that the land trust is responsible for making sure any volunteers working on the project clearly know what's invasive and what it is that's being cut. Just thought.
Can I accept that instead of trying to repeat it?
I'll move whatever Jamie said, or ask you to amend your motion to include that.
That is so I will accept the friendly amendment that it is the land trust responsibility to ensure that all volunteers working on the property or hired staff, whatever, is fully aware of the as of right limitations and what is an invasive in Connecticut.
To clarify, it's autumn olive and multiflora.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure there are a
And
lot of
other
invasives that,
There may be, although we haven't spotted them
Yeah.
yet, but along the edges there could be.
so just hold on a second, because we're still having a motion on the floor.
And there was a second to the amendment.
Pete, don't you have to approve the amendment?
Yeah,
Sorry.
you seconded.
Yes, I second.
You accept
I
the
second.
amendment? Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? No.
Thank
Good
you.
luck mowing.
Thank you. I'm sure you'll find more. It's everywhere.
How long is that gonna take?
A lot, a couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks, wow.
Garlic mustards everywhere.
Oh, there's garlic
We want.
Everywhere.
Wait for the cooler weather.
I would-
That's gone.
Oh,
First frost.
gotcha.
Oh, yeah.
I would welcome it if the commissioners wanted to sort of take a closer look at the materials I submitted, because there was some things moving forward in terms of, how we might locate paths and design, or, sort of designate areas where we want people to walk and keep them away from places that we don't. I think that as the season progresses and the grass gets up to knee high, a lot of people are not going to want to just generally walk through the area. So, by by doing some relatively limited mowing in corridors that have as little impact on the wetland soils as possible, and adjusting from year to year where, within a corridor, where that mowed area is. I think we'll be able to minimize the impact of what I anticipate is going to be fairly heavy public use of it.
Yeah.
There are about 140 houses north of I-95 that are within easy walking distance
Yeah.
of this property.
And more being
there
built.
was huge input from the public asking it to be kept open for passive recreation.
Yeah. Good, good, thank you.
Yeah, the document is in the Dropbox, but we can also email it out to the commissioners tomorrow, so it's easy to find. And if any commissioners have any concerns about something and want to bring it up at the next meeting, just let us know and we can put it on the agenda.
Thank you. All right, we're into the other business area. We have a legislative update on Public Act 21 to 29, effective October 1, 2021. Fair fees for multifamily housing and affordable housing reviews. Jamie, take it away.
All right, I'm not going to dive too much into it, but there was a change to the statutes that essentially states you can't have a higher assessment for multifamily housing than for single-family housing. Our regulations currently have a fee structure for single-family and duplex and a separate structure for commercial and multifamily, which is higher, so it would not be compliant with this requirement. This is effective starting, I believe, October 1st, yes, per the agenda. So there currently is a subcommittee looking at the fees. So hopefully we can get this resolved at least close to that October 1st date. And if something were to come in before we change the regs, we would have to figure out how that would apply to the fees. So I do think that does provide a bit of a deadline for wanting to get the fees revised, so that way the commission can be compliant with that requirement.
Concern, don't we have to send things to DEEP?
Yes,
before-
so realistically, looking at the time frame, I do not think that the commission can adopt a regulation unless you decide you want to do something right now. Before that time frame, because the commission does have to send proposed language up to DEEP 35 days before the public hearing. Then you're gonna have to notice the public hearing, open the public hearing, have your public hearing, and then deliberate. So, I think if we can try and aim for October or November, that would be ideal. And if the commission wants to be proactive and I don't know, we can talk with town council as to whether or not the commission can make like a decision ahead of time, so that way there's no possible bias as to how this would be handled. Like if you would just apply, if a multifamily housing application comes in, does it just get to use the single family fee structure?
Yeah,
I think that's the easiest
that's
way.
what we have to default to.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
that's the
Because-
intent of the statute.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's just the most direct way to handle it, I think.
That's done.
Okay, what's next?
You got that?
The next two public acts, Public Act 2134 and 21163, both extended permit expiration dates. So, basically permits are, I haven't quite worked out 100%. We are expecting guidance documents from DEEP. They said middle of August, hopefully, so hopefully soon, along with a, essentially, model reg update, proposed language. But I believe for all permits, essentially, the expiration date is extended to 14 years and can be extended up to 19 years. There's different language for permits issued between different timeframes, so there might be some that don't fall into that, but for the most part, that's the general basis of it. And we'll have more information for you when we get that information, and that would also be information we would obviously want to try and incorporate into any future regulation revision.
Okay. You finished with A? Thank you. Inland Wetland 090601, 117 Beacon Hill Road, also known as 83 Rose Hill Road, 10-lot open space subdivision. We're looking for an extension of this permit.
So this is our first example of that public act. So the permit, expiration date per the latest extension letter is September 25th, 2001. However, per the Public Act, the minimum duration of the permit is 14 years. So per statute, the permit is actually good through September 24th, 2023. The permit holder is asking for the maximum 19-year duration, which is September 24th, 2028. The commission has historically only granted extensions of like 3 years, has been my experience. You used to do 1 year and extended it to 3 years because if the project, particularly like in this case, hasn't started, they're not gonna finish it in 1 year. As long as the permit date is September 24th, 2003, or later, but before, or no later than September 24th, 2028, you can kind of do what you want. And essentially the applicant or the permit holder could come back and ask for another extension to the September 24th, 2028 date if you do not grant that full extension today.
So by statute, we have the authority to extend up to 19 years.
Correct. So it's automatically extended to 14 and you can extend up to 19. And
And it is
shall
silent on it, it is silent on between the two?
Yeah, so, in the past, the commission hasn't necessarily granted the full extension that's allowable.
Right.
With the idea that if circumstances change, it gives you another opportunity to take a look at things, before they continue to get extensions.
And there's no language in the statute that says having to justify something less than the full extension and all that kind of stuff, right?
No, it says that the commission shall grant an extension upon request as long as there's been no change in circumstances or, and there's no active no violations. However, it doesn't say that you need to necessarily grant the full requested timeframe.
So we could extend it to.
It says shall, not may.
20.
Yes, it says shall.
Okay.
We could extend it right now to September 24th, 2023 as the minimum.
Yeah, so our past practice has been, so that a similar thing happened back in, I think, 2011. So we have a draft letter that we would send out to permit holders when they would send in a request like this. And it would basically say, per statute, your permit has been extended to X date if you would like further extension. But at this point, there has been a request to extend it specifically to the September 24th, 2028. So that's the consideration, and it has to be at least September 24th, 2023.
So this has already been approved, correct, by inland wetlands? So what happens if our regulations have changed?
2009.
So that's what I mean. So what if development has gone on around this and it now?
So as long as there's been no violations and there's been no changes in circumstances, such as somehow the property changed or
The wetlands
they
changed?
changed their site plans or something like that.
How about if the wetland delineation changed? Because we just had that example of the wetlands getting larger.
The commission hasn't really looked at that in the past from I don't think the commission's ever asked for an updated wetland delineation as part of a permit extension request. I don't know that it would be outside of your purview to do so, though.
Have we
That
ever
was something-
denied a request?
I'm sorry?
Have we ever denied a request?
No, but I don't know that we've pushed everybody to the outer limit.
Yeah,
No,
no, you
no, no,
definitely.
2028
I'm
seems
trying to-
like a long.
I'm
trying to
not
see what it-
aware of any times that a permit extension has been
Okay.
denied.
So our
'cause
past
it is
practice-
You shall unless.
Our past practice has been to grant some extension.
Yeah, and usually it's been 1 to 3 years.
So,
We'll split the difference and do 2025 and move on to the next item.
Yep.
All right.
Do you need an actual
need a
motion
motion,
for that?
yeah.
I'll make a motion that we extend inland wetland 09.06.01, 1 through 17 Beacon Hill Road, 10 lot open space subdivision to September 24th, 2025.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Future meeting location.
We getting kicked out of here?
Oh, man, let's
So
go
this
back
is-
online. What
this
are we
is
doing here?
Two-sided. One is we've had a couple of requests / suggestions to move back to back to remote meetings. And then also kind of just jumping ahead to when we might be going back to in-person meetings. I was wondering if the commission might be interested in moving to the fire station, assuming that that's available because it's easier for BCTV to record there. And now that we're having BCTV record the meetings, I think that's fair to consider.
I guess one question with Firehouse. There is something to be said about the remote meetings where you can screen share and anybody participating can see the information. It is very difficult, as we saw today, right, with all these people not being able to see this. Does the fire station have that capability?
It does to a point. When the commission was reviewing the Costco application, they reviewed it at the fire station and did use PowerPoints. So it was tough for the commission because they had to turn around in their chairs and look, but it was very easy for the public. It worked out fairly well. So it's much better than here as far as sharing things with the whole room.
To accommodate that need, I think considering the firehouse instead of the community house for these meetings would be appropriate.
So we will do that for 2022. If we move back to in-person this year, do you want us to move them to the fire station if the room is available this year as well?
I would think yes.
Okay.
But I guess that raises then the question,
So
do we want to continue in-person meetings, or is there a concern that we need to accommodate regarding remote meetings?
Personally, I am in favor of the remote meetings. I think that going back and forth and the, like, I can't tell you how many times I'm like, no, I have to leave at this time, you know what I like, and I think just having a common pattern, I think that we see that numbers are going up. We're seeing more breakthrough cases where, you know, people are not being hospitalized, but the numbers are not moving in our favor. I think that having everyone on the computer, being able to hear everything more clearly, not having to listen through the mask, not whatever. I think that it is fairer because people can also get to the meeting from wherever they are. They don't have to physically get up and go somewhere if that's not something that they're capable of doing. I think it just makes for better access for folks.
Does staff have concern about moving to a remote?
I guess as staff, there was a request to possibly consider it for this meeting, and we did look into it. However, the concern is that the change from the executive order to the statute is that now you're required, if a member of the public were to ask for assistance, technological assistance, to join the meeting remotely, you have to provide it. And the town wasn't really ready to do that. So that's something they're working on, knowing that some of the commissions are looking to go to remote. So we should be able to do that for the September meeting.
When does that executive order terminate?
It's not an executive order, it's the implementer bill. So it sunsets, I believe, August 30th, 2022. Or not, sorry,
21,
April
right?
30th, 2022. So basically through April of next year, it allows for remote meetings. You have to notice it 48 hours in advance that it's gonna be fully remote, and there's other requirements, but the more complicated one is providing a room and computer for public to access the meeting.
So you almost need it hybrid.
And
You
then,
need to
so
have-
hybrid is the other option. I would rather not do hybrid if we can avoid it, because it's a lot more for us to handle as staff members. But yeah, it kind of almost makes it a hybrid in the sense that the town is setting up a room for people to access the meeting, if requested. It's only if requested.
What do you think for a public hearing, though? I think public hearing is difficult.
In person, if we
remote.
could get enough people to get a quorum.
And then we can decide about whether it's hybrid. If it's hybrid though, and staff's attending in person, I don't know that we'll be able to do the screen share. Guess they're telling us it's time to go. But that's something we can discuss if you guys are having a public hearing, or if it becomes an issue.
Okay. Fee revision subcommittee.
So what did we
So
decide?
September
we
meeting
decided
will
to-
be remote.
We decided firehouse. right,
Firehouse.
For 2022. If we can get it between now and 2022, yes. And we're gonna, I guess, wait for the town to get their act together on a room for
Oh.
public access so we can.
I mean, I just want to say for the record,
I think
I
you
don't
can
mind
make the decision
in-person
now if
meetings.
that's what, if you want to do remote. I already told them that you're planning on it.
Everybody like remote?
I like remote.
So, let's move to remote for the next meetings, except for a public hearing. We'll try to do an in-person public hearing. Any i's not
You think
dotted,
that there's more-
t's not crossed?
You think there's more access for a public hearing in person than remote? Is that why you want to do?
I think it's maybe easier to manage in person.
And there, believe it or not, there are still a lot of people that don't know how to get into a Zoom meeting. I mean, I know that's so hard to believe, but like in Garden Club, we still have people that can't join the meeting, and you have to go to their house and help them. And this is a year and a half into this. It's just, I mean, you have to. And I think for a public hearing, we have to make sure that we're accessible to all, regardless of their technological skills, ability, or availability of technology in their homes.
Yeah. Well, I think accessible to all is probably hybrid. But having lived through a year of hybrid, it's good times.
All right. Fee revision subcommittee. We have subcommittee meeting minutes for July 22nd, but we're not going to approve those tonight because Eric is not here.
Also,
But I think it's important to at least kind of give the commission where we're at.
Is that the list of stuff we have right here?
There's a packet, there should
Yeah.
be 4 items in there.
Yeah. You know, when we started this thing, the idea was how can we maybe be a little more effective in the use of our time and resources? And we should look at the regulations for that purpose. Fees, we thought were an appropriate vehicle to concentrate on, and I think that that's still true to some degree. However, as we looked at other towns, et cetera, our fees are, quote, not out of line. You can kind of pick a town, and there's a lot of variation on the towns in terms of the fees that they charge. So for one, I'm a little less concerned about our fees in light of other towns. Also, we don't seem to have any pressure from the town itself regarding covering more costs or things like that. So we're actually, when we looked at the fees, trying to see where can we benefit, the public to the highest degree by streamlining a couple things that are a little cumbersome in the existing regulations. One of them was the de minimis definition and how that could be applied such that it wouldn't involve a commission review and that staff could in fact do more with the de minimis criteria. But we had kind of a different set of opinion, and when you only have two members on the subcommittee, we kept tripping over the same thing, which was to get a list. One committee member wanted to talk about a list, and if you qualify on this list, you're de minimis and you get agent approval. The other side of the coin was things are not easily put into bucket lists, and we give up too much if we do that. And so we kind of stalemated in that area. And I don't know if staff agrees that that's kind of where we're at or not, or if anything I said is not
I think you
true.
summarized pretty well.
And so, from my standpoint, also, I guess Eric's had a change in terms of his day job, and so it's more difficult for him to attend the subcommittee meetings. So to continue the subcommittee with a member of two, where one member might not be able to attend the meetings, it is time to terminate the subcommittee, right? And then the real question is, how do we move the ball forward? Do we need to do that as a full commission? Do we need to reestablish a subcommittee? Obviously, we've got a public act that needs consideration as well. So I need to kind of pause at this point and see where the commission is at in terms of their thoughts.
Well, would it make sense for, when Eric can be at a meeting, for Eric and Peter to give us a summary of where they got to on going over this report, and then we can decide at that time where we want to go?
Yeah, my only concern about time is our enemy here.
Yeah.
You know, we've got some things that need doing, not the least of which is the public act issues. So this is going to wait 30 days, but my concern is beyond that.
Yeah, and Eric has indicated that he's not sure what his availability will be in the near future, so I don't know how long we want to wait to find out. Certainly, I agree with you that the ideal situation would be for the subcommittee to report back with their final findings. What I gave to all of you is the materials that I had prepared for the last subcommittee meeting, which ended up getting canceled. So they have not been reviewed or discussed by the subcommittee, but they're kind of where the subcommittee was gonna go next. So we can either try and schedule another subcommittee meeting and see how that goes, and if that doesn't work out before the next meeting, maybe put it on the agenda for the full commission, or maybe the full commission schedules a special meeting to discuss it, and whoever can attend as long as we get 4 people.
Let's start dancing.
Get my feet up cold.
Yeah, for one, I think it would be worthwhile from a time standpoint to see if we couldn't schedule a meeting with Eric and myself to go over the material that you prepared, prepare a final report from the subcommittee, et cetera, prior to our next regularly scheduled meeting, and report out at the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Okay. So just a quick thought. I was hoping that we would, at the subcommittee meeting we were supposed to have last week, kind of get to a point where we might come to the full commission for questions for guidance. So I kind of have 2 questions that I would like to ask the full commission real quick, in case we can schedule that special meeting, that subcommittee meeting. One of which is de minimis. That's basically an application that's going to have very minor impact. Staff reviews it and says this isn't likely to have much of an impact at all. And it gives the applicant a reduced fee. We use this in the past for like sheds and above-ground pools. And it keeps the application fee less than the actual item itself. So that was something that the full commission had decided that should get added back in before the subcommittee was formed. There's been a bit of back and forth about how much of a definition you have. And so we were gonna come up with kind of a general description that was open-ended and maybe some guidance as to possible suggestions. So I have drafted a very rough inland wetlands and watercourses permit application guidelines that kind of outlines that. I guess the question for the commission is, do you agree with doing a more general description that leaves it open-ended, with, you know, the discretionary comment that it's up to the agency and or its duly authorization to make agent to make the determination? That's been what our past practice has been, and I think to try and define everything that's de minimis would take forever, and you'd always miss something. Okay.
Well,
So,
I think that it assumes that everything is black and white, and we live in a very wet, saggy, gray world.
Yeah.
With some modeling, and those numbers make me, they make me nervous because they don't include like slope, they don't include soil type, and so to say like, well, you know, 30 feet is de minimis, well, what does that mean? Like 30 feet
Yeah.
when, with like, what are the other circumstances around it? And then if we have that published and somebody, then, you know, an applicant can say, well, this is de minimis, this is what your paperwork says, and then we're stuck with the language that we have approved, which didn't consider the 20 other variables that are important.
yeah, so if we were to move forward with like the guidance document, it does have a disclaimer on it, about the discretion, and that no vegetation removal, grading does not exceed footprint of structure plus 2 feet, no retaining walls, no steep slopes, distances are listed for general purposes only. In all cases, the character of the land and potential impact to wetland/watercourse shall be considered when determining whether a proposed regulated activity qualifies as de minimis. But it does allow for an applicant to say, oh, wait, maybe my project might be de minimis, I should ask the agent about it. But I think to try and define it in the regulations would be very difficult and hard, and I couldn't find a town that does, so.
Well, and I think that, you know, when there's not language in a regulation, it defaults to the standard dictionary definition, and I think that that's a safety net that is okay.
The other thing about this, the number of feet from the wetland or watercourse, I really wouldn't want to see this in here, because you could have a huge pool that's 75 feet, and that person would think, oh, good, it's de minimis. But you could have a tiny one, you know what I'm saying? So, and that's why you have to really look at things rather than kind of cut you off.
Okay. And then the second question is, there are some towns that do kind of a menu-based fee, where the fee is based on the activity you're proposing to do. And then some towns further divide it either by how far away you are from the wetlands and or how much area of disturbance you have. And there's an example of draft menu application fees. It's still very rough. Still trying to figure out how we would do it, because it's not the way we've done it in the past, and it's not easy for me to wrap my head around. But I was wondering if the commission is interested in trying to further pursue that idea, or if you like the basic area of disturbance fee bracket that is currently being used, and maybe we look at how that's structured as far as modifications to the fees go. Or do you want the subcommittee to make a decision and report back?
Well, so it's area of disturbance or type?
Yeah, so essentially, I think the thought process is if you have an above-ground pool that you want to do, trying to make it easy for you to find what your application fee would be. My concern is if you're doing a single-family house and an above-ground pool and a deck, it's going to be very confusing for the applicant to figure out what their fee is. We wouldn't necessarily charge you for all of those items individually, but we wouldn't necessarily just charge you for the single-family home either.
I imagine that this conversation has been litigated before, and I think that I anticipate that the outcome of that was probably for simplicity's sake, but also given that, you know, what our purview is about impact to wetlands, then that's really about area. And so I think that there's a direct connection between what we're, my brain is starting to fog over, like, you know, what we're accounting for and our regulations. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's good because I'm not sure I do anymore.
At least I think I generally get the gist of what you're saying. And I think to use the menu, I understand the appeal, but I think on the surface it sounds so simple, but then when you dive into it, it gets very complicated.
It's like those, you know,
And then
now we're
also,
back at 12
It gets
very-
complicated if you don't want to give up something.
You can't even put single-family residence as an item, because then you have a different fee for single-family than multifamily. So then it's just like, if you can't even list single-family house, then.
Yeah, there's too many.
Variables.
There's too many options, right? Yeah.
Okay.
We needed big categories only. Because like, once you get into more than like 5 choices, it's just, forget it. Forget it.
If we're done with this, can I, are we done with the fee revision stuff? I'm only standing just because I'm tired of sitting, but I realized that I made a mistake when I moved that first site walk, which was the car wash place. I was thinking I was doing a motion for this most recent one at 26 Old New England.
Oh, okay.
So I'm wondering if we should revoke that.
Well, you can make the motion.
Even if I'm not there?
Even if you're not there, and you can even vote if
Okay.
you're not there.
Okay.
But
Okay,
if you
fine.
wanted to.
No, then it's okay. I just realized that I
abstain, then
wasn't-
you could
okay.
rescind your.
So you can vote on meeting minutes if you weren't at the meeting?
As long as
If
you
Yes.
reviewed them. You can, as
Yes,
long
if
as
you've read them
them.
and
You've read everything.
Agree with it.
Yeah, and then it's up to you if you want to vote on them with you not. If you
Yeah,
haven't
because you
been
can
there or
always
not.
like watch the video, read the minutes, and then be like, I've watched the recording.
Okay,
and
I
read
didn't
the
know, I
minutes.
always abstain
I'm
when
up
I'm
to
not there.
speed, I could
It's not a
totally
bad
vote.
practice to abstain if
I wasn't there.
that's what you like doing. But it's also not a problem.
Okay, that's good to know.
Thank you. As long as you read the minutes.
so now we are
Five
Are we
items.
out to agent
down
approvals?
to agent approvals. Anything there of interest?
No,
No? Okay.
Correspondence?
because we went out.
First
to
3 came
240.
before the commission, and then 60 Laurel Hill Road. It was an existing in-ground pool and patio. They're replacing exact same footprint. Original pool predated in the wetland regulation, but because it's new ground disturbance, I had them submit an application, but because it's within the same footprint, no grading changes, agent approval.
Okay, correspondence, we have open space project. This is, I guess, a follow-up to a presentation that was made some months ago.
Actually, it is correspondence received from Richard Shanahan of the Open Space, trying to name, the name of the board, but with the Open Space.
Parks and open spaces, is that it?
So,
Conservation?
I only have one copy, but it's been brought to our attention that Island View condos, I believe it is, there is a drainage issue where part of the pipe from the drainage system has eroded, and the outlet appears to have disconnected, has a section of pipe, and
Oh my
it
God.
all is flowing towards the water course.
There's a drain to Pine Gutter Brook.
What,
which ultimately drains into the Supply Ponds property. So bringing it to your attention because it's obviously having an impact on wetlands and water courses.
Holy cow.
I'm
Where's
not
this, at
exactly.
the back of the complex?
Yes,
Like down the hill?
yes.
The
And these photos
erosion.
were submitted by Richard Shanahan.
And that's wild.
So,
What road is Island View on?
Brushy
off
Plains,
the
right
property.
across from Veterans Park.
there's been some historical
Oh,
problems
it's
out
really
there
newer,
in the
yeah.
past, so I was trying to look at the files, but I haven't really had the time
This
to.
is, have you seen the report, the Pine Gutter Brook report?
Yeah, I haven't read the whole thing, but I
No?
know what you're aware of. Yeah. I have it on my desk.
so
actively.
there's an urgency here.
So it's obviously been an ongoing issue, but, you know, now that's been brought to our attention, I don't know if you want me to reach out to town council before sending something to the association, or if you want me to.
No, I mean, I think Pine
Um,
Gutter Brook is it's a problem child because it's in a very flashy, like it gets, the storm drainage to it is very flashy, so it's very deeply incised and it's highly erodible. So, who was it?
Where is Pine Gutter Brook? Is that up by, where we did that site walk that time when the power company wanted to do some work? Is it between like Brushy Plains and Queech, somewhere in there? Okay.
Yeah, it's between there, like you can, it's behind those condos, so like,
Here's this
Yeah.
yeah.
burial.
It's
But
behind
where
the.
does it start? Like up north more, like Laurel Hill Road and all that?
You know where, so if you turn onto Laurel,
Mm-hmm.
just before you turn onto Red Rock, it goes right underneath
Okay, so
the
it's
road.
near where we did that site walk for the power company or whatever, okay. And it goes all the way down to,
It connects down to the supply ponds.
okay, so
So-
it heads towards Queech then?
There is a part of it that I don't know how it gets, like, when it kind of, it goes, it's behind my house, like, a ways, but it's just my house, woods, and then Pine Gutter Brook. And it goes, at that point, it's traveling west, and I don't know where it resurfaces.
To get to the supply pond.
Right. Yeah, actually.
Who has to take action here, Jim?
Actually, what?
So do you want me to
There's-
send them a letter
There's a middle space
indicating
there,
that we've
that's in my head.
been made aware that there's a situation, or do you want me to be
I
more aggressive?
I could say
or-
I would be more aggressive.
It's a hot mess.
I'm sorry?
Is that the only thing that's adding the sediment to Pine Gutter Brook, or are there other things causing the problem?
No, it's highly erodible. But they should fix their.
Their
what-
section.
They should, yeah.
They should be responsible for their section, even if they're in a lower part of the watershed.
And our practice has been an OB.
So the I think an NOV might be the right vector here.
I'm sorry?
I think that might be the right vector here, yeah.
I mean, between a letter and a cease and correct, you know,
I think NOVs are usually a little bit of an easier process as far as,
well, I mean, the cease and correct,
It's
then we need a,
friendlier,
we need a public hearing in 14
but
days.
also,
and-
yeah, you don't have to have the
No.
just cause hearing within
Right.
10 days. And also, I think with the notice of violation, basically you'd be asking for an application, whereas a cease and correct order, you'd be requiring that they submit the plan and handling it through that.
So let's
cease
do
and
an
correct
NOV.
vector. All right.
You good?
Okay,
Motion
motion
to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Out of here. Thank you.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Brantford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BrantfordTV.org.